The sharp snip echoed louder than it should have in a quiet classroom. Ava Johnson stirred from her light nap, the hum of the overhead projector still droning in her ears. She blinked, dazed, disoriented. Something felt wrong. Off. Too light. Too quiet. Then the laughter started. Not the kind of laugh that meant something was funny, the kind that curled around your spine like ice, a cruel and jagged thing meant to hurt. Ava sat up straight, her heart catching in her chest. She reached up instinctively to the side of her head, fingers brushing over jagged strands of her once thick, curly hair. Gone. A gasp caught in her throat. Her hand trembled as she pulled away a clump of her own hair, not just a few strands, but a thick coil, severed unevenly, the edges frayed like someone had used school scissors meant for crafts, not cruelty. She turned slowly, her wide eyes locking with a group of students 2 rows back, their shoulders bouncing with barely suppressed laughter. Among them, Rachel Mathers, blonde, popular, and petty, Jason Fields, the loud one with a mean streak a mile wide, and maybe worst of all, Brianna, someone Ava had once considered a friend. Jason held up the scissors, grinning. "Just wanted to help you lose some weight, Johnson," he said, loud enough for the class to hear. "You know, that mop was getting kinda heavy." The classroom erupted again, not just laughter this time, but a mix of uncomfortable chuckles and stunned silence. No one said a word to stop it. No one stood up for her. Ava's chest tightened, the sound of her heartbeat pounding in her ears like war drums. She stood up slowly, not trusting her voice, not trusting her legs. She didn't cry. Not yet. Not here. She walked out of the room. No one followed. In the bathroom mirror, she saw the damage. It wasn't just a cut. It was deliberate. The left side of her head had a huge chunk missing, exposing her scalp in places where the curls used to fall gracefully around her cheekbones. Ava touched the uneven line, staring at herself like she was someone else. Her curls, they were a part of her identity. A part of her mother. Her grandmother. Her heritage. Her confidence. They weren't just hair, they were a crown she wore in defiance of every beauty standard that told her otherwise. And now it was ruined. She slid to the floor of the bathroom stall and buried her face in her arms. For the first time in months, she felt invisible and exposed at the same time. How could a joke cut so deep? Back in the hallway, no one looked her in the eye. No teacher came to check on her. Even Brianna hadn't texted. Ava pulled her phone from her bag, hands shaking, and stared at the screen. Nothing. No messages. Not even a "sorry." She scrolled through Instagram while sitting on the cold tile floor, and that's when she saw it. A video. The moment Jason had snipped her hair, someone had filmed it. Of course, they had. The caption read, "She didn't even wake up, face with tears of joy #trimtime." Hundreds of likes. Dozens of laughing emojis. People commenting things like, "Damn. That's savage. She needed a new look anyway, nail polish. LMOO, I can't stop watching this." She swallowed hard, her vision blurring. The screen dropped from her hand and clattered onto the floor. Her fingers clenched into fists. That night at home, her mom noticed right away. "Oh my God. Ava," her voice cracked as she rushed over. She knelt in front of her daughter, gently lifting Ava's chin. "What happened to your hair?" Ava didn't want to speak. She just shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks silently. Her mother's face twisted, a blend of rage and heartbreak. "Who did this?" Ava didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she walked into the bathroom and opened the cabinet beneath the sink. There, next to the coconut oil and old bath bombs, was the pair of scissors they used once a year to trim split ends. She stood in front of the mirror, took a breath, and cut. Snip. Then another. She evened it out as best she could, each cut louder than the last. Her shoulders rose and fell with each breath, a silent rebellion pulsing through her veins. When she finished, her curls were gone, replaced with a short, uneven buzz that revealed her soft, round face and high cheekbones. Her eyes looked fiercer than she remembered. She stepped out to find her mom in tears. Not because of the haircut. Because she knew her daughter had been broken today. Ava walked over and knelt just like her mom had earlier. "They took my hair, but they're not taking me." Her mom pulled her into a hug so tight Ava thought she'd fall apart. "You're still beautiful," her mom whispered, kissing the top of her head. "You're still powerful." That night, Ava sat at her desk and opened her journal. April 8th. "They cut my hair today. In front of the whole class. They laughed. I wanted to disappear. But maybe this isn't the end. Maybe it's the start of something else. Because if this is rock bottom, I'm building from here. They thought they broke me. They have no idea who I'm about to become." Ava posted a picture of herself later that night. No filters. No captions. Just her face. Her new hair. Her stare. In 20 minutes, she had over 300 comments. Some were cruel. But some weren't. "You're braver than I ever could be. You're still glowing, girl. They cut your hair, not your soul. Keep rising." A DM came in from a name she didn't recognize. "They did the same thing to me last year. You're not alone." Ava stared at the message. Something flickered in her chest. Not rage. Not sadness. Hope. And it was just enough. Just enough to light the first spark. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Before the viral video, before the scissors, before the silence that swallowed the hallways whole, Ava Johnson was just a girl trying to blend in while holding on to everything that made her different. She grew up in a small, mostly white suburb just outside of Atlanta. On paper, it was the kind of town that prided itself on community events and honor roll banners. But Ava always knew, there were things they didn't put on the brochure. Like the way teachers smiled a little tighter at her. Or how security guards watched her longer in the halls. Or how kids made jokes about her hair and asked if it was real, like she was some kind of exhibit. Still, Ava carried herself with quiet strength. Her mom used to call her, fire under ice. She wasn't loud, but she didn't shrink either. Not usually. Her mom, Denise, worked long shifts at the hospital, sometimes double, to keep their little two-bedroom apartment running. She was the kind of woman who never complained, just poured her love into meals, kisses on the forehead, and fierce advice that came without sugarcoating. "You better not let them tell you who you are," she'd say, stirring spaghetti with one hand and pointing at Ava with the other. "They didn't build you, baby. Don't let them break you." But it was Ava's grandmother, Loretta, Big Mama, everyone called her, who planted the deepest roots. Big Mama was a force of nature. Sunday hats, sharp wit, gospel humming in the kitchen. She had grown up in Montgomery, Alabama, marched in protests when she was just 17, and raised 3 kids on her own after her husband passed. Every story she told was a masterclass in survival, in pride, in black beauty. Especially the stories about hair. "You know," Big Mama said once while greasing Ava's scalp with warm shea butter, "back in my day, they tried to burn it out of us. Called it wild. Called us dirty. Told us if we wanted respect, we had to straighten every curl flat like the lies they told about us." She'd pause, her fingers pausing on Ava's part. "But your crown," she said, "ain't for nobody's approval. It's a birthright. And you don't ever, let somebody touch it unless they love you." Those words stuck with Ava. That's why she spent Sundays learning how to twist her coils into bantu knots or fluff them into a halo. That's why she never asked her mom for a flat iron, even when most of the girls in school were getting silk presses by 6th grade. That's why her hair became a symbol, not just of style, but of self. Middle school was rough, but Ava made it through. She had her small circle, Lily, Brianna, and Nate. The four of them met in 7th grade art class and bonded over sketchbooks, anime, and a shared hatred of cafeteria pizza. Back then, Brianna had box braids and defended Ava when kids called her bougie for bringing homemade lunch. Nate doodled superhero versions of all of them. Ava was always the one with gravity-defying curls that shot lightning bolts. And Lily? Lily was the one who always knew what to say. She was white, yes, but never tried to be cool. She asked questions when she didn't understand. She stood behind Ava when she wore her afro to school for the first time in 8th grade and a teacher said it was distracting. So what happened? Ava didn't know when the lines started shifting. Maybe high school had a way of doing that, turning tight friendships into polite nods in the hallway. Or maybe people like Brianna got tired of defending things they didn't fully understand. By sophomore year, the group had splintered. Nate moved to a different school. Lily joined the yearbook club and started hanging out with girls who wore matching jeans and lip gloss. Brianna dyed her hair blonde and laughed a little too hard when Rachel made jokes at Ava's expense. Still, Ava tried to hold on, not because she was desperate for popularity, but because those memories mattered. They were real. At least, they used to be. Outside of school, Ava found her rhythm in design. She kept a sketch pad filled with bold, unapologetic ideas, streetwear with African prints, jackets that draped like robes, t-shirts with slogans like, "Texture is power," and "Kinks and Queens." She dreamed of applying to a pre-college fashion program in New York the following summer, Parsons, Fit, or maybe even that special mentorship program Rihanna tweeted about once. But dreams felt fragile now. After what happened, Ava hadn't opened her sketchbook in days. She wasn't sure she even wanted to anymore. Who was she designing for? Who was she kidding? On Tuesday, she skipped school. Just couldn't face the whispering, the stares, the barely hidden phone cameras. She stayed home, curled up in Big Mama's old rocking chair, flipping through her grandmother's photo albums. There were pictures of black women in every style imaginable, twist-outs, cornrows, locks, short fros, straightened perms. One black and white image showed Big Mama in a crisp white blouse and pressed curls, standing in front of a colored-only sign with a crooked grin that said, "You can't kill my joy." That's when Ava found the photo. It was her, maybe 4 years old, sitting on her mom's lap, grinning with 2 fat puffs on either side of her head. She looked proud. Untouchable. And for the first time in days, Ava smiled. Maybe she wasn't broken. Maybe she was just beginning again. That night, she texted Lily for the first time since the haircut. "Ava. Hey. Can I ask you something?" Lily. "Of course." "Ava. Why didn't you say anything that day?" 3 dots blinked on the screen for a long time. Then. Lily. "I froze. I didn't know what to do. And I'm so sorry." Ava stared at the message. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. "Ava. Silence is still a choice." She hit send. Simple. Honest. Then she turned off her phone and went back to her sketchpad. The pencil moved slowly at first. Then faster. Then like lightning. Lines became ideas. Ideas became shape. Shape became power. And when she was done, she had drawn a girl, bald, eyes full of fire, wearing a jacket that read, "They tried to cut me down. Now I'm cutting through everything." Ava stood at the entrance to the school, her hand resting on the cold, metal door. She could already hear the buzz of voices inside, chatter, laughter, the occasional shrill ringtone. It was just like every other morning, yet nothing had ever felt this heavy. She hadn't been to school in 3 days, but it felt like a lifetime. The world had kept moving, but she'd been stuck in a moment that replayed over and over in her mind. The laughter. The scissors. The video. Ava inhaled deeply, the smell of fresh chalk dust and cafeteria pizza wafting through the air. She didn't know what she expected to happen when she walked through that door. Would they stare? Would they whisper? Would they laugh all over again? Her stomach turned. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Lily. Lily. Are you coming? Everyone's asking about you. I'm so sorry again. Ava quickly typed a reply, erasing it before she could send it. What could she even say to that? She slid her phone back into her bag and walked into the school. The first thing that hit her was the silence. It wasn't the eerie kind of silence that happened when something big had happened and no one knew how to react. No, this was the kind of silence that said, "You're different now." She walked down the hallway, passing the lockers where students stood, huddled in groups. Their conversations lowered as she passed, but no one greeted her. No one looked her in the eye. There was no hate. But there was no compassion, either. It felt like walking through a ghost town. She had hoped for something different. Maybe an apology. Maybe a chance for redemption. But as she approached her locker, she felt it, Brianna's eyes on her. Brianna, once her friend. The girl who had braided her hair, laughed with her over sleepovers, and listened to the same music. Now she stood in front of Ava's locker, staring at her, arms crossed, eyes down. Ava paused for a moment, waiting for Brianna to speak. But nothing came. "Brianna," Ava said quietly, are you gonna say something?" The silence stretched long and thin between them. Finally, Brianna met her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what you want me to say, Ava. I didn't do it." Ava blinked, a chill rushing through her chest. "What?" "I didn't cut your hair," Brianna repeated, her voice cracking. Ava looked down at the ground, trying to steady herself. "But you were there. You didn't stop them." Brianna's face twisted. "You don't understand. I tried to tell them to stop, but they wouldn't listen. I was scared." She looked away. "I didn't want to be the next target." Ava took a step back, her heart thumping in her chest. She had been through a lot in the last few days, but this hurt in a way she couldn't even describe. "You should have stood up for me," Ava said, her voice trembling. "I needed you." Brianna's face crumpled, but she didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. And neither did Ava. Without another word, Ava turned and walked down the hall. The rest of the day went by in a blur. Every classroom felt too small. The whispers followed her wherever she went. At lunch, she sat alone. Her usual spot, once filled with friends, was now empty. She picked at her food, not tasting it, her eyes glued to the table. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Nate. "Nate. Hey, just saw the video. I'm sorry. You don't deserve that." She read it twice, then tucked her phone away. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate it. Nate was a good person. But the fact that none of the other kids, not Brianna, not Rachel, not Jason, had even bothered to apologize stung more than the cutting. She had always known she didn't fit perfectly into their world. She had never been the kind of girl to mold herself to fit in, and maybe that was the problem. She didn't need their apologies, but damn, she wished they'd at least acknowledge the hurt they'd caused. By the time school ended, Ava had decided something. She would no longer wait for them to offer her their pity or fake apologies. She didn't need them to validate her. She wasn't going to shrink anymore. As she walked out of the building, something inside of her snapped into place. The air felt different. Like it wasn't just the world she had to navigate. It was her power. She had always been told her hair was her crown, but maybe it was more than that. Maybe the strength she had been searching for was never in her curls, it was always inside her. Ava sat at the kitchen table that night, a bowl of half-eaten cereal in front of her. Her mom was working the late shift again, and Big Mama was sitting in the living room, watching old TV shows. Ava picked up her sketchbook, opened it to the page where she'd drawn the girl with the bold jacket. She stared at it for a moment, then began to sketch again. This time, the girl was different. Stronger. More defiant. Ava's pencil moved quickly, furiously, as she added bold lines and words to the page. They tried to erase me. But I'm still here. She closed the sketchbook with a snap, feeling something shift in her chest. This wasn't just about hair. This wasn't about fitting in. This was about reclaiming what was hers, her identity, her strength, and her future. The next day, Ava showed up to school wearing a shirt she had designed herself. It had a powerful message on the front. I am my crown. She walked through the halls with her head held high. The whispers still followed her, but they couldn't touch her anymore. She wasn't the girl they thought they could break. She was the girl who was rebuilding herself from the ground up. And no one, not even them, would be able to stop her. Ava hadn't expected anything. After everything, the last thing she thought would happen was people reaching out to her, offering anything that might make the pain go away. But that's exactly what happened, not in grand gestures or dramatic speeches, but in the smallest, most unexpected ways. The first sign of something changing came that very morning. It was a typical Tuesday. Ava was walking to her first period math class when she felt a tap on her shoulder. Hey, Ava, said a voice, hesitant yet familiar. She turned to see Nate standing there, his hands shoved in his pockets, looking uncomfortably out of place. You okay? He asked, his eyes genuinely searching hers. Ava blinked, caught off guard by his presence. Nate had been one of her closest friends before everything had fallen apart. They had sat together in class, laughed over stupid memes, and shared long, rambling conversations after school about their dreams and future plans. But somewhere along the way, even he had pulled away. Now, here he was. I'm fine, Ava said, even though the words felt foreign. She wasn't fine. But she didn't want to burden him with her pain, not after everything. What's up? I just wanted to make sure you're okay, Nate said. His voice softened. I know it's been rough. But I don't want you to think I'm, just another person who disappeared when things got hard. Ava looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. It's not like that. I get it. People do what they can to survive. Nate sighed, stepping closer. I didn't mean to disappear, Ava. I didn't know what to say. But I'm here. If you need to talk or something. Her heart swelled with something she hadn't felt in days, relief. Thanks, Nate. I appreciate that, she said, giving him a soft smile. The next day, something else unexpected happened. Ava was walking to her next class when a hand reached out and tugged gently at the sleeve of her shirt. Ava? It was Lily. Ava didn't know what to expect from her. After the incident with the haircut, Lily had been distant, too. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't said anything. But today, there she was. Hey, Lily said, her voice small but determined. I've been thinking about everything. I know I should have done more. I should have said something when it happened. But I didn't, and I'm sorry. Ava's chest tightened. She hadn't expected an apology, not from Lily of all people. It's fine, Lily. I know you were probably scared too. It's not about that anymore. But Lily shook her head, her eyes filling with something that looked like regret. No, Ava. It is about that. It's about the fact that I stood by and let it happen. I should have stood up for you. I should have told everyone that it was wrong. Ava took a deep breath. It was hard to admit it, but part of her had been waiting for Lily to reach out, to show that she cared enough to apologize. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed her friendship until this very moment. "I don't know if I can just forget it, but I appreciate you saying something," Ava said, her voice steady despite the swirl of emotions inside her. Lily nodded. "I get it. I'm here now, okay? I don't want to lose our friendship." For the first time in a long while, Ava felt something shift. It wasn't going to be easy. Trust had been broken. But there was hope, and sometimes that was all she needed. The unexpected moments of support kept coming. The next afternoon, as Ava sat alone in the library, sketching designs for her next collection, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "You know, you're really talented." Ava looked up to see Mr. Simmons, the art teacher, standing next to her. He was a quiet man, often lost in his own world of paintbrushes and canvases, but Ava had always admired his eye for design. "Thanks, Mr. Simmons," she replied, though she was a little surprised by his words. "I'm just trying to figure it out, you know." "You're doing more than figuring it out," he said, settling into the seat next to her. "I've been watching your work for a while, Ava. You've got a gift." Ava's cheeks flushed. "You think so?" "I know so," he said with a smile. "Your designs aren't just about fashion. They're about telling a story. You're using your art to express something deeper. That's powerful." Ava didn't know how to respond. She'd always thought of her designs as just a hobby, just something she loved doing. But hearing Mr. Simmons speak about her work like that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she had something more to offer than she'd realized. "You should think about applying to some of the fashion schools around here," he added, his voice thoughtful. "You've got the talent to go far, Ava." For the first time in weeks, Ava felt a spark of hope. Maybe this was her path. Maybe she could rise above the pain, above the rumors, and show the world who she was. "I'll think about it," she said quietly, her hand resting on her sketchbook. That evening, as she sat on the couch with her mom, scrolling through social media, she saw something that made her stop in her tracks. The video. It had gone viral. But this time, it wasn't the humiliation that caught her attention. It was the comments. "Ava's a queen. Can't let anyone take that from her. This is so wrong. Sending her love from everywhere. Ava, you are amazing. Don't let them break you." Ava's hands shook as she read the words. The support, the messages of encouragement, it was more than she could have imagined. She'd expected the worst. She'd expected to be torn apart, to become the punchline of every joke in the school. But instead, she found something completely different. People had her back. Even people she didn't know. She closed her phone and looked at her mom, who had been quiet all evening, watching her. "You see," her mom said softly. "I told you, you're a fighter. People see it." Ava smiled, her heart a little lighter than it had been before. Maybe she wasn't alone in this after all. Maybe the strength she thought she lacked was already inside of her, waiting to be unleashed. The next day, when Ava walked into school, it was different. The whispers were still there, but they weren't as harsh. The stares didn't hold the same weight. There were still people who would never understand her, who would never respect her, but now, there were also people who would stand beside her. And for the first time, she realized something: she didn't need everyone to accept her. She only needed to accept herself. The weeks following the viral video were a whirlwind. At first, it felt like nothing had changed. The school was still filled with whispers, stares, and awkward silences. Ava had come to expect that by now. But somewhere along the way, something had shifted inside her. It was subtle at first, like the crack of dawn just before the sun rises, a quiet change that was hard to pinpoint, but impossible to ignore. It started with small steps. Ava found herself walking into the school every morning with her head a little higher, her back straighter, and her gaze more confident. It wasn't that she had it all figured out, or that the pain from the past few weeks had magically disappeared. But the more she focused on herself, on who she was and who she was becoming, the less the opinions of others seemed to matter. On a Thursday afternoon, as Ava sat in her art class, Mr. Simmons walked over and placed a new set of sketching pencils on her desk. She looked up at him, surprised. "I thought you might need these," he said with a smile. "You've been working hard, and I know you've got a lot more ideas in you." Ava stared at the pencils, her fingers hovering over them. It was a gesture of kindness, something so simple, yet it meant the world to her. She hadn't realized how much she needed that affirmation until it came from him, someone who saw her talent for what it was, someone who wasn't distracted by what the world thought of her. "Thanks," she said softly. "I really appreciate it." That evening, after a long day of classes and a brief chat with Lily, Ava returned home to find something unexpected waiting for her. Her mom was sitting on the couch, her arms folded, a serious expression on her face. When Ava walked in, her mom glanced up at her, then back at the papers in her hands. "Mom," Ava said, raising an eyebrow. "What's going on?" Her mom stood, walking over to the kitchen counter where Ava's sketchbook was open. She picked it up, showing Ava a few of her drawings. "I've been thinking," her mom began, her voice steady but with a hint of excitement. "You've got something here, Ava. You know that, right?" Ava furrowed her brow. "I know, Mom. But what are you trying to say?" "I mean, maybe it's time you take your art more seriously," her mom said, glancing over her shoulder to make sure Big Mama was still watching TV in the other room. "You've been talking about fashion design for a while, and I know you've got the talent. I want you to look into some programs, some real programs. Not just local ones, but ones that could get you noticed." Ava stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. "Wait, what do you mean? You really think?" Her mom nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. "I do. You've got a vision. And sometimes the only thing standing in the way is the courage to chase it. I'll support you, Ava. But you have to take the leap." Ava blinked, her breath catching in her throat. This wasn't just about hair or school anymore. It was about her future. For the first time in ages, she felt a spark, a fire in her chest that had been dormant for so long. I don't even know where to start," Ava admitted, her voice small. "Start where it feels right. Do some research. Write to some schools. But you can't let fear hold you back," her mom urged, giving her a firm look. Ava nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She had always known her mom was tough, but hearing her speak this way, with such confidence, made Ava believe for the first time that maybe she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The next morning, Ava woke up earlier than usual, her mind racing with ideas. The past few days had been a blur of emotions, but now, she felt a quiet determination settle inside her. She knew what she had to do. She wasn't going to just let the world tell her who she was anymore. She was going to define that for herself. After school, Ava sat down at her desk with her laptop open, the glow from the screen lighting up her face. She began researching fashion schools, looking at their programs, the scholarships, and the work of their alumni. It wasn't easy, but she didn't mind. This was what she had always dreamed of, to pursue something bigger, to show the world what she could do. For the first time, the thought of applying to schools felt like a real possibility. She wasn't just doing this for herself anymore. She was doing it for everyone who had ever been underestimated. For all the girls who had been told they didn't belong, for every kid who had ever been picked on, every dreamer who had been told to stay in their lane. Ava wasn't just doing this to escape her past. She was doing this to create her future. The next day, when she walked into school, the hallway was a little quieter than usual. There was an uneasy tension in the air, a strange feeling that came from knowing something was changing, but no one was sure exactly what that something was. But Ava didn't care. She wasn't looking for approval anymore. She wasn't looking for anyone to tell her she was doing the right thing. She knew what she was doing. She had made up her mind, and nothing would stop her. As she walked to her locker, she caught sight of Brianna standing nearby. For a moment, their eyes locked, and Ava felt a sharp pang in her chest. But this time, it wasn't anger or resentment that filled her. It was clarity. She walked up to Brianna, who was nervously fiddling with her phone, clearly not sure what to say. "Ava," Brianna said hesitantly, her voice small. "Look, I know things have been weird between us, and I wanted to tell you again, I'm sorry. For what happened. I didn't know how to handle it." Ava didn't react immediately. She just stood there, letting the silence hang between them. Then, after a long pause, she spoke. "I know, Brianna. And I'm not holding on to it anymore. But I'm done waiting for people to tell me what I can and can't do. I'm going to go after my dreams. No matter what anyone says." Brianna looked at her, surprised by the strength in her words. I think that's amazing, Ava. Honestly, I do." Ava smiled softly, giving Brianna a nod. "Thanks. But this isn't about what anyone else thinks anymore." That afternoon, when Ava opened her email inbox, she saw something that made her heart race. An invitation to interview for a fashion program at one of the top design schools in the country. She couldn't believe it. She had actually done it. Ava stared at the email for a long moment, her fingers shaking. For years, she had doubted whether she was good enough, whether anyone would ever take her seriously. But this email was proof that her dream was within reach. She had taken that first step. Now, there was no turning back. Ava hadn't realized how much the weight of the upcoming interview was affecting her until she woke up that morning. The sun was barely up, and yet her mind was already racing. Her heart thumped in her chest as she sat up in bed, staring at the email invitation again. The interview was scheduled for that afternoon, and Ava couldn't help but feel the pressure building up. Her mom had been incredibly supportive through the process, but Ava couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a world she wasn't sure she belonged to. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw herself standing in front of a panel of experts, people who had likely been in the industry for years, asking her questions she wasn't prepared to answer. Her hands were shaking as she picked up her phone. She could already feel the nerves creeping in, like ants crawling beneath her skin. The same feeling she had gotten before every important test or every moment of public speaking she had dreaded in the past. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, trying to shake off the fear. The house was quiet, her mom had left for work, Big Mama was still snoring in her chair in the living room. Ava had the house to herself for a few hours, which was just enough time to gather her thoughts and prepare. She took a deep breath, looking at her phone's calendar. "Okay. No distractions," she said firmly. The first thing she needed to do was figure out exactly what to wear. She had always believed in fashion as a form of expression, but now it felt different. This wasn't just about looking good. This was about showing them who she was. She needed to communicate with more than just clothes. She needed her outfit to speak for her, to show that she was ready for this. Ava opened her closet and sifted through the clothes she had collected over the years. She could hear her mom's voice in the back of her mind, "You have to show them what you're made of, Ava. Don't be afraid to stand out." Her eyes landed on a black dress she had designed and sewn herself, a simple, elegant piece with clean lines, but it carried an edge. The fabric was a soft satin, with intricate detailing at the neckline, giving it a touch of boldness. She'd made it when she first started experimenting with fashion design, and it was one of her proudest creations. "That's it," she muttered to herself, pulling the dress from the rack. It felt like a statement, like a quiet declaration that she was both bold and capable. She added a pair of black ankle boots that had a slight heel, just enough to make her feel powerful without losing comfort. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she felt a sense of pride. This wasn't just a dress. It was a symbol of everything she had overcome. It was her way of saying, I'm not afraid anymore. With her outfit decided, Ava sat down at her desk, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Her resume, which she had painstakingly put together with her mom's help, sat in front of her. She hadn't thought much about it before, it just felt like a piece of paper. But today, it seemed to have more weight. This resume was her ticket. It was her chance to show that she wasn't just another girl who had faced hardship. She was someone who had turned her struggles into strength. Ava's phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from Lily. "Hey, I know you're probably busy, but I just wanted to say good luck today. I know you're going to crush it. You've got this." Ava smiled, her heart warmed by the message. It was moments like these that reminded her of how much people could surprise you. She had expected to be alone through this journey, but somehow, she had people who truly cared. She quickly replied, "Thanks, Lily. I really appreciate it." The drive to the fashion school was filled with a quiet nervous energy. Ava's mom had insisted on coming with her, though Ava had protested at first. But now, as they drove through the city streets, the tension in the car was comforting. Her mom's calm presence grounded her. When they arrived, Ava's nerves were at an all-time high. The school was even more impressive in person than it had appeared on their website. A grand stone building stood tall in front of them, with large windows showing off impressive displays of fashion and design. Ava's hands tightened around her purse as she looked up at the entrance. "You ready?" her mom asked softly, turning to her with a reassuring smile. Ava swallowed, nodding slowly. "I think so." Her mom squeezed her hand. "Remember, you're not just applying for a program. You're showing them who you are. Don't be afraid to let that shine." Ava gave her mom a quick smile before stepping out of the car. As she walked up the steps, her heart raced in her chest. She was nervous, but she was also ready. She had spent so many years questioning her worth, wondering if she was good enough. But now, she knew the answer. She was good enough. Inside, the lobby was bright and filled with people talking and moving about. There was a certain energy in the air, the buzz of creativity, the hum of possibility. Ava took a deep breath and made her way to the front desk, where a receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. "Hi. You must be Ava. Welcome. Let me show you to the waiting area. The panel will be ready in just a moment." Ava nodded, following the receptionist through the building. The hallway was lined with art, sketches, and fabrics, and Ava couldn't help but feel inspired. She felt as if she were walking through a place that had been made for people like her, dreamers, creators, risk-takers. The waiting area was a large, open space, with high ceilings and soft lighting. Several other students sat nearby, all dressed in varying degrees of chic, from casual street style to high-end couture. Ava felt out of place for a moment but quickly shook off the thought. This was where she belonged. This was her moment. A few minutes later, she was called into the interview room. The panel consisted of 3 individuals, a renowned fashion designer, a professor from the school, and a previous alumni who had made waves in the industry. They were all seated behind a long table, and as Ava entered the room, she felt the weight of their eyes on her. "Good afternoon, Ava," the fashion designer said, smiling warmly. "We've been looking forward to meeting you." Ava nodded, trying to keep her composure. "Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here." "Tell us about your journey, Ava," the professor said, leaning forward. "What led you to pursue fashion?" Ava took a deep breath and began speaking, her voice steady. She told them about her experiences, her struggles, the bullying she had faced, and how all of that had shaped her desire to create. She talked about her designs, the way she poured herself into each piece, and the dreams she had of using fashion as a way to express not just beauty, but resilience. The words flowed more easily than she had expected. It was as if she was telling her story for the first time, not as someone trying to fit in, but as someone who knew exactly who she was. As the interview wrapped up, Ava stood up, her heart still racing. "Thank you for your time," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You did wonderfully," the alumni said, giving her an encouraging smile. "We're very impressed with your passion and vision. We'll be in touch soon." As Ava left the room, she felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had done it. She had stepped into the spotlight, and she had given it everything she had. Now, it was up to them. But no matter the outcome, Ava knew one thing for sure: she was ready. The days that followed the interview felt like a blur. Ava had walked out of the fashion school's grand building feeling a sense of accomplishment, but it didn't last long. As soon as she stepped back into the real world, the waiting began. It was agonizing. Every second felt like an eternity, every minute dragging on slower than the last. The email inbox on her phone became her new obsession. She checked it obsessively, first thing in the morning, during lunch breaks, before bed. She even set up notifications, hoping to get the news as soon as possible. But the email never came. Instead, there was silence. Her mom tried to comfort her, reminding her that sometimes the best things took time, that waiting was part of the process. But Ava couldn't help the gnawing anxiety eating away at her. What if they didn't like her? What if her story wasn't enough, her designs weren't impressive enough? She had poured everything into that interview. Had it been enough? One afternoon, about a week after the interview, Ava was sitting on the porch, sketching ideas in her notebook when Lily texted her, "Hey, how's the waiting going? Any news yet?" Ava let out a frustrated sigh as she typed back, "Nope. Nothing yet. I'm losing my mind over here." Lily's response came quickly, "You've got this, Ava. I know it's tough, but remember, you're already ahead of the game just by being you. Don't let the silence make you doubt yourself." Ava smiled, her fingers pausing over the phone screen. Lily had always been there for her, offering words of encouragement when Ava needed them the most. The text helped, even if only a little. She took a deep breath and put the phone down. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe the silence wasn't a sign of failure. It could just be part of the process. She had worked too hard to let her fears control her now. Ava's phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her thoughts. This time, it was an email. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened the message, holding her breath. It was from the fashion school. Subject: Your interview results. Dear Ava. Thank you for taking the time to interview with us for our fashion design program. After careful consideration, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted into our next cohort. We were truly impressed with your passion, creativity, and the story behind your designs. Your unique perspective and ability to convey your personal journey through your work stood out to us, and we are excited to see how you will continue to grow as an artist. Congratulations, and welcome to our program. Best regards. The admissions team. Ava stared at the screen, her eyes unable to focus. She blinked twice, then once more, just to make sure she was seeing it correctly. The words didn't seem real. She had gotten in. She felt a wave of emotion crash over her, a mixture of disbelief, joy, and relief. Her hands were shaking as she placed the phone down on the table. She had done it. Against all odds, despite everything, she had made it. Her mom was inside, watching TV, but Ava couldn't wait. She ran inside, holding up her phone, unable to contain her excitement. "Mom," she shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. Her mom turned, confused at first, until she saw the look on Ava's face. What? What happened? Ava couldn't even speak. She handed her the phone, watching her mom's face as she read the email. For a long moment, her mom just stared at the screen, her lips slightly parted. Then, as the words sank in, a slow smile spread across her face. "Ava," her mom whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. "You did it. You actually did it." Tears welled up in Ava's eyes as she hugged her mom tightly. All the fear, all the doubt, all the sleepless nights, it was all worth it. She had worked so hard to get here, and now, the future was opening up in front of her. I can't believe it, Mom. I really can't, Ava whispered into her mom's shoulder. You're amazing, Ava, her mom said, her voice thick with emotion. You've worked for this, you deserve it. Ava pulled back, wiping her tears. I couldn't have done it without you. Her mom smiled warmly, squeezing her hands. You never had to do it alone. I've always believed in you, and I always will. In the days that followed, the news spread quickly. Ava shared her acceptance with Lily, who was just as excited as Ava had been when she first heard the news. The two of them had grown closer over the past few months, and Lily had supported Ava through every moment of doubt. Now, it was Lily's turn to cheer her on, and she did so with enthusiasm. See? Told you you'd crush it. Lily texted, followed by a string of heart emojis. Ava smiled, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The weight of the waiting was finally lifted, and now, a new chapter was about to begin. But there was still so much to do. Even though she had been accepted, Ava knew she wasn't done yet. There were classes to attend, projects to complete, and new challenges to face. The real work was only just beginning. And though she was excited to start this new journey, she also knew there would be more bumps along the way. There would be more obstacles, more setbacks, and more moments of doubt. But now, Ava was different. She had learned something crucial throughout this process, that she was stronger than she had ever given herself credit for. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it didn't matter. Ava was ready for whatever came next. A few days later, Ava sat down at her desk to begin making plans for her next steps. She started looking into scholarships and housing options. She even started sketching new designs, inspired by the idea that her dream was no longer a distant wish, it was becoming her reality. And, for the first time in a long time, Ava felt an overwhelming sense of possibility. The future was hers for the taking. The day Ava had been waiting for had finally arrived. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at herself, her heart racing with excitement and nerves. She had packed her bags, said her goodbyes, and now she was about to step into a new world, one that she had dreamed of for so long. Ava adjusted the strap on her bag, a canvas tote she'd bought during one of her many late-night shopping sprees, and took a deep breath. This was it. The beginning of everything. Her mom stood beside her, giving her one last hug before Ava set out for her new adventure. You're going to do amazing, Ava, her mom said, her voice soft but full of pride. Remember, don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. You're not alone. I know, Mom, Ava replied, holding back tears. She had known this moment was coming, but nothing could truly prepare her for it. Her mom had been her anchor for so long, and now, for the first time, Ava was about to fly on her own. Call me when you get there. And text me if you need anything. You've got this, her mom said with a reassuring smile. Ava smiled back, feeling a lump in her throat. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. Now, go make us proud. The drive to the fashion school campus felt surreal. The towering buildings of the city surrounded her, and as she drove closer to the school, she felt a wave of nervous excitement wash over her. She'd seen pictures of the campus before, but seeing it in person was completely different. The modern architecture, the sleek glass windows, the vibrant energy, everything felt so real now. When she arrived, she parked and sat in the car for a moment, collecting her thoughts. The place was bustling with students coming and going, some of them with bags full of materials, others talking in groups. Ava could feel the pressure rising in her chest again. This was the moment when everything would change. She took one last deep breath before grabbing her bag and heading inside. The campus was even more impressive than she'd imagined. The hallways were lined with artworks, some of them abstract, others showcasing bold, innovative designs. There was a sense of creativity in the air, like anything was possible. As she walked down the hall, she overheard snippets of conversation. Some students were talking about upcoming projects, others about fashion shows they were preparing for. The sound of scissors cutting through fabric, the smell of fresh paint, the buzz of sewing machines, it all felt so vibrant, so full of life. Ava's heart began to race again. This was it. She was no longer just dreaming of this life. She was living it. Ava made her way to the student services desk, where a friendly-looking woman greeted her with a warm smile. "Hi there. You must be Ava," the woman said. "Welcome to the school. We're so glad you're here. Are you ready to get settled in?" "Yeah, I think so," Ava replied, trying to steady her voice. "I'm just a little nervous." The woman nodded sympathetically. "Totally understandable. But don't worry, you'll get the hang of it. I'm here to help you get everything sorted. First, let me show you to your dorm." Ava followed her down a corridor, her steps echoing in the spacious hall. The building was old but well-maintained, with a certain charm to it. As they walked, Ava tried to keep her focus. She had to make a good impression. She had to prove that she belonged here. The dormitory was on the second floor, and when they reached it, Ava was handed a keycard and given a brief tour of the shared space. The room was small but cozy, with a single bed, a desk, and a large window that let in plenty of natural light. It was perfect. "I think you'll like it here," the woman said. "You're in a hall with a lot of other fashion students, so you'll get to meet people who are in the same boat as you. Don't be afraid to introduce yourself." "Thanks," Ava said, setting her bag down on the bed. She glanced around the room, her excitement building. This was going to be her new home. As the woman left, Ava began unpacking, trying to keep herself busy and calm her nerves. She hung up her clothes, set up her sketchbook on the desk, and organized her things. But her mind kept drifting to the unknowns, the new people she would meet, the classes she would take, the projects she would create. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she couldn't keep up with the rest of the students? She shook her head, pushing the thoughts aside. She had to remember what her mom had told her, "You belong here." A knock on the door broke her thoughts. Ava opened it to find a girl around her age standing in the doorway with a friendly smile. "Hey, you must be Ava, right?" "I'm Mia, your roommate," the girl said. "I just got back from class. I thought I'd introduce myself before things get too busy around here." Ava smiled, feeling a little relieved. "Nice to meet you, Mia. I'm Ava." "Awesome. So, what brings you to the school? What's your major?" Ava's nervousness faded as she and Mia began chatting. It was strange how quickly a conversation with someone new could make her feel more at ease. Mia was a fashion design major too, and they found themselves talking about their shared passion for clothes, fabrics, and styles. Ava felt a connection instantly. "I've been here a year," Mia said, sitting on the bed across from Ava's. "It's intense, but it's also so rewarding. You'll love it once you get into the groove." Ava nodded, her nerves slowly melting away. She was still nervous about the challenges ahead, but with Mia's easygoing presence and the excitement of starting something new, she felt a flicker of hope. This was going to be okay. That evening, Ava went for a walk around the campus. The sun was setting, and the campus looked even more beautiful in the soft glow of twilight. She passed by the school's design studios, where students were working late into the night, their work illuminated by the harsh lights of their drafting tables. The energy was contagious. Ava felt something shift within her, a realization that this was her path. The doubts, the insecurities, the fear of being out of place, it all started to feel smaller. She had chosen this path for a reason. She had worked hard to get here, and now, she was going to give it everything she had. When she returned to her dorm later that night, Mia had already turned off the lights, leaving Ava with a quiet moment to herself. She sat at the desk, her sketchbook open in front of her, and began to draw. The lines and shapes flowed effortlessly as her mind turned inward, focused entirely on her designs. Ava's heart swelled with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. For the first time, she wasn't just dreaming about a future. She was creating it. The first week at the fashion school was a whirlwind. Ava had been thrown into a world of new faces, demanding professors, and endless deadlines. The campus, which had seemed so vibrant and full of life just days before, now felt like a maze of unfamiliar hallways, each turn leading her deeper into the unknown. Her first class, Foundations of Fashion Design, was everything she had expected and more. The professor, a no-nonsense woman named Professor Montgomery, had a sharp gaze and a reputation for pushing her students to their limits. Ava couldn't help but feel a bit intimidated as she walked into the classroom on the first day. Professor Montgomery stood at the front of the room, her arms crossed over her chest as she surveyed the students. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod toward the class as the door closed behind Ava. "Welcome," Professor Montgomery said in a low, commanding voice. "In this class, you will learn the basics, the foundation, of what it means to be a fashion designer. It will not be easy. There will be days when you want to quit. But you won't. Because if you do, you're not cut out for this." Ava swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. Quit? She wasn't here to quit. She was here to succeed. Professor Montgomery continued, outlining the syllabus and expectations for the course. Ava tried to keep up, scribbling down notes, but she couldn't help feeling the weight of the pressure that already seemed to be mounting. After class, Ava found herself in the student lounge, trying to process everything. Her mind was racing, and her thoughts were all over the place. She hadn't expected the pace to be this fast. The assignments were coming at her quickly, and the other students seemed so much more prepared, so much more confident. They were discussing techniques and designers she had never even heard of. It was like they had been living in this world for years, while she was just starting. Ava slumped down onto one of the couches, staring at her phone, unsure of what to do next. "Hey, you okay?" a voice interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see Mia standing there, holding a coffee cup and a friendly smile. "Yeah, just overwhelmed, I guess," Ava replied, rubbing the back of her neck. "This place is a lot more intense than I expected." Mia sat down beside her, setting her coffee down on the table. "I get it. The first week is always a bit of a shock. But trust me, you'll get the hang of it." "I did, and so will you." Ava nodded, trying to smile. "I hope so. I just feel like I'm way behind compared to everyone else." "Don't worry about them," Mia said, her tone reassuring. "Everyone has their own pace. It's not a competition. You just need to focus on yourself and what you need to do to get better." Ava thought about that for a moment. Mia was right, of course. There was no point in comparing herself to the other students. She had her own journey, her own vision. And she was going to follow it. The rest of the week was a blur of classes, sketching, fabric swatches, and critique sessions. Ava found herself staying late in the design studio, trying to catch up on assignments, testing out new fabrics, and practicing her techniques. She was determined to prove that she belonged here, even if it meant pushing herself harder than she ever had before. But as the days passed, Ava started to realize that there was something else she hadn't anticipated, the constant sense of being watched. Everywhere she turned, there were eyes on her. Her classmates, the professors, even the teaching assistants, it was as if everyone was assessing her, judging her abilities, waiting for her to stumble. She was hyper-aware of every little mistake, every sketch that didn't look quite right, every project that didn't measure up to her standards. And then there was Ryan. Ryan was one of the top students in their cohort, and from the very first day, Ava had noticed him. He had this natural confidence about him, and he seemed to glide through everything with ease. His sketches were flawless, his designs innovative, and his presentations polished. He had a way of charming everyone in the room, from the professors to the other students. Ava hadn't spoken much to Ryan, but there was something about the way he carried himself that made her feel small. The worst part was, it seemed like Ryan noticed her too. One afternoon, Ava was working on a new design in the studio, sketching furiously in her notebook, trying to get everything just right. She had a vision for a new dress, sleek, modern, with a bold, geometric pattern. It was her first real attempt at combining high fashion with the personal style she had always loved. But every time she looked at the sketch, something didn't feel right. Frustrated, she crumpled the paper and threw it into the trash. "Not good enough," she muttered under her breath. "Hey, you okay?" Ava looked up, startled, to find Ryan standing in front of her. He had a curious look in his eyes, and for a moment, she wondered if she was imagining it. "I'm fine," Ava said quickly, trying to smooth things over. "Just working through some ideas." Ryan raised an eyebrow, glancing down at the trash bin where her crumpled sketch lay. "You're throwing that away?" "Yeah," Ava replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just not right." Ryan looked at her for a moment, as if assessing her. Then he reached down and pulled the crumpled paper out of the trash. "Let me see it," he said. "Maybe you're being too hard on yourself." Ava hesitated, then reluctantly handed him the sketch. Ryan unfolded the paper, glancing at the lines before looking back at her. "You know," he said, giving her a small smile, "this could be something. You just need to refine the details. The structure is there. You've got potential." Ava blinked, surprised. She wasn't used to compliments, especially not from someone like Ryan, who seemed to have everything figured out. "Thanks," she said quietly, feeling a mixture of confusion and gratitude. Ryan nodded, glancing at the design again. "Don't give up on it. Just because it's not perfect now doesn't mean it won't be. That's what fashion is about, right? Evolving, making mistakes, and getting better." Ava watched him walk away, her heart still racing. She didn't know if she could trust his words or if it was just another attempt to size her up. But there was something about the way he had looked at her design, something about the way he'd spoken, that made her think maybe she wasn't as far behind as she had originally thought. Maybe she was on the right track after all. The pressure was on. Ava had barely finished processing Ryan's words from the other day when Professor Montgomery assigned the first major project of the semester, a fashion collection that would showcase each student's unique design style. The project was a big deal. It would be the first real test of their abilities, and the students knew that it could make or break their reputation in the program. Ava could already feel the weight of the assignment bearing down on her. The collection was due in 4 weeks, and she needed to come up with something innovative, something that stood out. It wasn't enough to just get by. In this school, you had to blow everyone away. The theme for the project was open-ended, which was both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, Ava had complete creative freedom. On the other, the lack of direction meant the pressure to come up with something fresh, something no one else had done before, was even higher. "Remember, this collection needs to tell a story," Professor Montgomery had said during the lecture. "It's not just about the clothes. It's about what the clothes say. What do you want your collection to represent?" Ava spent the next few days obsessing over the theme, sketching, scrapping designs, and trying to find the right balance between innovation and practicality. She was constantly second-guessing herself, unsure of whether she was on the right track. Every time she thought she had a breakthrough, she would doubt her choices, feeling like she was falling short compared to the other students in her class. One afternoon, as she sat in the studio, surrounded by piles of fabric swatches and crumpled sketches, she felt completely stuck. The ideas that had come so easily in the past now seemed distant, unreachable. She glanced around the room, observing the other students working on their designs with such focus and confidence. Ryan was sketching furiously at his desk, and Mia was meticulously pinning fabric to a mannequin, her movements deliberate and sure. Ava felt a pang of envy. How did they make it look so easy? She sighed, running her fingers through her hair. The familiar feeling of inadequacy crept in. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mom. "How's everything going? Remember, you're capable of amazing things. Don't let anything get in your way." Ava smiled faintly at the message. Her mom's support meant the world to her, but it wasn't enough to silence the voice of doubt that had settled in her mind. She had to find a way to push through it, not just for herself, but for everyone who believed in her. The next morning, Ava walked into the design studio with a renewed sense of determination. She was tired of letting fear control her creative process. She needed to stop comparing herself to everyone else and focus on what made her unique. As she entered the studio, Mia looked up from her work and smiled. "Hey, how's it going with your project?" she asked. "I've been struggling," Ava admitted, sitting down beside Mia. "I keep second-guessing everything I do. I don't know if I'm doing enough or if it's even good enough." Mia shrugged, her expression thoughtful. "I get that. But here's the thing, no one has everything figured out. You've got to trust your instincts. You don't need to be like anyone else. Just do your thing." Ava nodded, taking in Mia's words. She was right. She had to stop worrying about whether her work was as good as Ryan's or anyone else's. The only way she could truly succeed was if she stayed true to herself. That afternoon, after hours of staring at her sketches, Ava had an epiphany. She started to think about the theme in a new light, not as an abstract concept but as a reflection of her own journey. She had faced so much adversity growing up, so many times when others doubted her because of the color of her skin, her background, or her appearance. But she had always fought through it, always pushed forward, always kept her head up. Her collection could tell that story. Ava began sketching with renewed energy. She focused on bold, geometric patterns and sharp lines, inspired by the strength she had found within herself over the years. She thought about the textures and colors that had always resonated with her, vibrant shades of blue, red, and gold, combined with soft, flowing fabrics that gave a sense of movement and freedom. Each piece in the collection would reflect a different chapter in her life, a visual representation of how she had fought through her struggles to find strength. It wasn't about creating something that would impress others. It was about creating something that was true to who she was. As the deadline for the project drew closer, Ava threw herself into her work. She spent long hours in the studio, experimenting with fabrics, cutting patterns, and sewing her designs together. Mia often stopped by to check on her progress, offering encouragement and sharing tips on how to refine certain techniques. "You're on the right track," Mia would say after each visit. "This is going to be amazing." Ryan, on the other hand, remained distant. Every time Ava tried to engage with him about her project, he gave short answers and quickly returned to his own work. It was clear that he was focused on his own success, and Ava wasn't sure if that was a good thing or if it made her feel even more out of place. But that didn't matter anymore. Ava had stopped looking to Ryan for validation. She had stopped worrying about what others thought of her work. This project wasn't about competing with anyone. It was about expressing herself. The night before the project was due, Ava stood in front of her sewing machine, stitching the final pieces of her collection together. She was exhausted, her hands sore from days of cutting, pinning, and sewing, but she couldn't stop now. The last dress, the centerpiece of her collection, was nearly done. She took a step back, admiring the way the fabric shimmered under the studio lights. The dress had a fluidity to it, a sense of motion that reflected the very spirit of her journey. Ava's heart swelled with pride. This was her story. This was her voice. When the alarm rang, signaling the end of the night's work, Ava packed up her things and stepped out of the studio. The campus was quiet, the streets empty, and Ava felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had done it. No matter what happened tomorrow, she had given it her all. She had stayed true to herself. The morning of the presentation, Ava woke up early, her heart racing. Today was the day. The day she would finally reveal the collection she had poured her soul into for the past few weeks. Every stitch, every cut, every design was a reflection of who she was, and now, it was time for the world to see it. She stared at herself in the mirror, adjusting the collar of her jacket, smoothing the fabric of her pants. She felt a strange mixture of excitement and dread. What if they didn't like it? What if they thought it wasn't good enough? What if I'm not good enough? Shaking her head, Ava took a deep breath. No. She wasn't going to let the doubts win. She had done her best, and that was all that mattered. After a quick breakfast, she grabbed her portfolio and her collection and headed to the fashion studio. The campus was already bustling with students, many of whom were nervously chatting with one another about their projects. The tension in the air was palpable. When Ava arrived, she saw that the room had been transformed. The space was now a runway, with a bright spotlight shining down on the center of the room. The other students were busy adjusting their mannequins, making last-minute tweaks to their designs, and getting ready for the big moment. Ava found a corner for herself and began to carefully place her designs on the display racks. Her hands trembled as she arranged the fabrics, making sure everything looked perfect. She knew this was her chance to make an impression, to show everyone who she was, and what she was capable of. As she worked, she couldn't help but glance at the other students. Ryan was already in the front of the room, confidently adjusting his pieces. His collection was flawless, as expected. Perfectly tailored garments, exquisite detailing, and a sophisticated color palette. It was the kind of collection that would likely get him a top score. Ava felt a knot tighten in her stomach. How could she possibly compete with that? Her collection was bold and personal, but was it sophisticated enough to stand up against Ryan's? Hey, you okay? Mia's voice pulled Ava out of her thoughts. Ava looked up and forced a smile. Yeah, just, nervous. Mia smiled back, her eyes filled with encouragement. You've got this. Just remember why you started. This is your moment to shine. Don't let anyone take that away from you. Ava nodded, grateful for Mia's support. She took a deep breath and tried to calm her nerves. Focus. You've got this. Soon enough, the presentation began. The students sat in a circle, their designs displayed around the room, while Professor Montgomery and a panel of industry professionals stood at the front, ready to judge the work. Ava could feel her heart pounding in her chest as she watched the first few students present their collections. Each student took their turn, explaining their inspiration and vision behind the designs, and then standing back as their pieces were showcased. Some of them spoke confidently, while others stumbled over their words. But despite the nerves, each design was met with polite applause and nods of approval from the professors. When it was finally Ava's turn, her breath caught in her throat. She stood up slowly, walking toward the center of the room, where her collection was displayed. Her legs felt like jelly, and her palms were sweaty. But she forced herself to stand tall and look around the room. The silence in the air felt deafening. Ava could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her, scrutinizing every inch of her designs. She cleared her throat and began to speak, her voice a little shaky at first. My collection is inspired by my journey, she said, her hands trembling as she gestured toward the designs. It's about strength through struggle, through adversity, and through self-discovery. Each piece represents a chapter of my life, a moment when I had to fight through my fears and keep moving forward. Ava paused, gathering her thoughts. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the panel. This collection is a celebration of resilience. It's bold, it's colorful, and it's unapologetically me. It tells the story of how I've grown, how I've learned to embrace my flaws and my strengths. And I hope that when you look at it, you see not just the clothes, but the story behind them. She took a step back, her chest tight with anticipation, as the models began to walk the runway in her designs. The lights overhead shone brightly, casting dramatic shadows on the fabric, making the colors pop. The music played softly in the background, creating an atmosphere of suspense. As each model walked, Ava watched the faces in the crowd. She saw nods, smiles, and whispers. She couldn't tell if they were impressed or just being polite, but the uncertainty gnawed at her. The final model strutted down the runway in Ava's centerpiece dress, the one she had poured the most love and care into. It was a flowing, deep blue gown with intricate geometric patterns in gold. The dress shimmered under the lights, and as the model twirled, the fabric moved with such grace that Ava couldn't help but smile. She turned back to the audience, waiting for their response. There was a long moment of silence after the last model had returned to the stage. The panel exchanged looks with one another, their expressions unreadable. Ava's stomach twisted in knots. Had they liked it? Had she failed? Finally, Professor Montgomery spoke. "Ava," she said, her voice steady, "this is a collection with a lot of heart. The pieces are bold, and they tell a clear story. It's personal, which is something that's hard to achieve, especially this early in your career. You've got a strong sense of your identity as a designer." Ava felt a rush of relief wash over her, but the professor wasn't finished. "However, I do think there's room for refinement. The shapes are interesting, but they could be more polished. And while the fabric choices are vibrant, they sometimes clash with the construction. But that's something you'll learn to balance with time. You're on the right path, Ava." Ava nodded, feeling a mix of pride and frustration. Her work hadn't been perfect, but it had been noticed. She had managed to convey something real, something raw. And that, she realized, was enough for now. When the class ended, students crowded together, talking excitedly about their projects. Some were thrilled with their feedback, others were disappointed. Ava stood quietly in the corner, watching as Ryan walked up to her, his eyes scanning her collection. "That dress at the end?" Ryan said, nodding toward the centerpiece gown. "That one's amazing. You've got something here, Ava." Ava smiled, though it felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Ryan's words, while brief, meant more to her than she expected. "Thanks," she said quietly. "That means a lot." As the day came to a close, Ava realized something important: this wasn't the end of her journey. It was just the beginning. She had proven to herself that she could push through the doubts, that she could create something meaningful. And no matter where the road led, she was ready to face whatever challenges came next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The days after the presentation were a blur for Ava. The critiques from Professor Montgomery and the panel still echoed in her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability that had crept in when she revealed her collection to the class. The tension of the moment had been like walking a tightrope, and she couldn't help but wonder if she had stepped too far outside of what was expected. But then something unexpected happened. One afternoon, a week after the presentation, Ava was sitting at her usual spot in the design studio, sketching ideas for her next project. She had just put the finishing touches on a new design when her phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. Ava frowned, a little unsure about whether or not to open it, but curiosity got the better of her. "Hi Ava, this is Olivia Harris, a designer with Harris Couture. I had the pleasure of seeing your collection during the presentation, and I was very impressed. Would you be interested in a potential internship with us? Let me know if you're available to talk. Looking forward to hearing from you." Ava froze, her eyes wide with disbelief. Olivia Harris. The name rang a bell. Olivia was a well-known fashion designer, renowned for her innovative, avant-garde collections that had been featured in major fashion weeks across the globe. Ava had admired her work for years. To even think that she might be interested in Ava's design seemed unreal. For a moment, Ava just stared at the screen, her mind racing. Was this some kind of joke? Her hands were shaking as she quickly typed back. "I'm definitely interested. I'd love to talk more. When would be a good time?" Within minutes, Olivia had replied, suggesting they set up a call that afternoon. Ava felt like her heart was beating out of her chest. This was a huge opportunity. But with that excitement came a knot of anxiety. What if I'm not good enough? The call with Olivia Harris went better than Ava could have ever imagined. They spoke for nearly half an hour, with Olivia asking her about her design process, her inspirations, and her aspirations in the fashion industry. Ava was nervous at first, her words coming out in a rushed, jumbled manner. But Olivia's calm, encouraging tone quickly put her at ease. I've seen a lot of talented young designers, but you've got something unique, Ava, Olivia had said. I loved how you conveyed emotion through your collection. You're not just creating clothes, you're telling a story, and that's what makes your design stand out. I think you'd be a great fit for our team. Ava felt a wave of warmth flood through her. Thank you so much, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've always dreamed of working with designers who have that kind of vision. Olivia smiled through the phone. Well, consider this your first step into the world you've always dreamed of. I'd like to offer you an internship with Harris Couture. It's a chance for you to work alongside some of the best in the business. How does that sound? Ava's breath caught in her throat. She blinked, trying to process what Olivia was saying. I don't even know what to say. Yes. Yes, I'd love to. The rest of the conversation flew by in a blur. Olivia outlined the details of the internship, when it would start, the responsibilities, and what she would need to do to prepare. Ava felt like she was floating as she hung up the phone. Her dream was beginning to take shape. But as the excitement settled, Ava found herself faced with the reality of the opportunity. The internship at Harris Couture was an incredible chance, but it would come with its own set of challenges. She would have to move to New York City, away from her family and friends. She would be thrust into the high-pressure world of professional fashion design, surrounded by some of the most talented and demanding designers in the industry. It was a dream, yes, but it was also terrifying. Ava spent the next few days in a haze, weighing her options. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that this was what she had always wanted. A chance to prove herself in the industry. A chance to learn from the best and grow as a designer. But there were so many questions. Would she be able to handle the pressure? Would she be able to keep up with the fast pace of a top fashion house? What if she wasn't good enough? Her friends could sense the change in her, and when Mia stopped by her apartment one evening, she could see that Ava was deep in thought. What's going on? Mia asked, sitting down beside Ava. I got an internship offer, Ava replied, her voice quiet. From Harris Couture. Olivia Harris herself wants me to work with her team. Mia's eyes widened in disbelief. What? That's amazing, Ava. You've worked so hard for this. I knew you had it in you. I know, Ava said, rubbing her temples. It's just. I'm scared. What if I'm not ready? What if I mess up? I don't want to disappoint anyone, especially myself. Mia put a hand on Ava's shoulder. Ava, listen to me. You've got the talent. You've got the vision. You wouldn't be getting this offer if you weren't ready. You're more than capable. It's natural to be scared, but that's part of the process. You can't grow if you don't step outside your comfort zone. You've already proven you can handle pressure. This is just the next step. Ava felt a sense of relief at Mia's words. Maybe she was ready after all. I'm going to do it, Ava said, her voice firm. I'm going to take the internship. It's time to stop being afraid. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparations. Ava packed her bags, said her goodbyes to her friends and family, and made arrangements to move to New York City. The reality of what she was about to do hit her in waves, but each wave was filled with excitement rather than fear. This was the beginning of her journey, the start of something big. When the day finally came to leave, Ava stood at the airport, looking out over the bustling terminal. She felt a rush of anticipation mixed with a sense of accomplishment. This was her chance to prove to herself and the world what she was capable of. As the plane took off, Ava leaned back in her seat, her mind racing with the possibilities. This is just the beginning. The world is waiting. And for the first time, Ava truly believed that she was ready to face whatever came next. The bright lights of New York City welcomed Ava as she stepped off the taxi and onto the bustling streets of Manhattan. The skyscrapers towered above her, their glass facades reflecting the midday sun. She had imagined this moment so many times, the moment she would step into the city that had always felt like the epicenter of fashion and dreams. And now, she was here, in the heart of it all. Ava stood for a moment, taking it all in, the cacophony of honking taxis, the chatter of people rushing by, the smell of food carts on the corner. It was everything she had imagined, and more. She could almost hear the pulse of the city, like a beating heart, sending energy through her veins. "Welcome to New York," she whispered to herself, the words barely audible over the noise. Her phone buzzed in her hand, snapping her out of her reverie. It was a text from Olivia Harris. "Ava, I'm excited for you to start tomorrow. Don't forget to be at the office by 9 a.m. sharp. I'll be expecting you. The address is 11th Avenue, Suite 220. Let me know if you need anything." Ava smiled, feeling a wave of nervous excitement wash over her. Tomorrow was the big day. The first day of her internship at Harris Couture. She had dreamed of this for so long, and now that it was finally happening, she could hardly believe it. She glanced at the time and realized she still had a few hours before she would need to head to her new apartment. Ava had rented a small studio apartment in Brooklyn, not far from the fashion district. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and it felt like the perfect space to start this new chapter in her life. The next morning, Ava woke up early, her nerves tingling with anticipation. She dressed carefully in a sleek, professional outfit, a tailored black blazer over a white blouse and a pair of high-waisted trousers. She was determined to make a good first impression. As she glanced at herself in the mirror, she couldn't help but think about how far she had come. Just a few months ago, she was a student in Chicago, unsure of what her future would hold. Now, she was standing at the threshold of a dream come true. The subway ride to Manhattan was a blur of faces and sounds. Ava kept her head down, lost in her thoughts as she mentally prepared herself for the day ahead. The subway cars were crowded, and the air was thick with the smells of coffee and city grime, but Ava couldn't have cared less. She was so focused on the opportunity that awaited her. When she finally arrived at the Harris Couture office, she stood in front of the building for a few moments, taking in the sleek, modern exterior. The building was a symbol of everything she had worked for: success, sophistication, and artistry. She could feel the weight of the moment. She was about to step into a world where everything would change. Inside, the lobby was pristine, with polished marble floors and towering ceilings. The receptionist, a woman in her early 30s, greeted her with a polite smile. "Hi there, you must be Ava," she said. "Olivia's expecting you. Go ahead and take the elevator to the 22nd floor. It's the last stop." Ava nodded, her stomach fluttering with nerves. She took a deep breath as she entered the elevator, pressing the button for the 22nd floor. As the doors closed, she stared at her reflection in the mirrored walls, her palms growing clammy. The elevator dinged softly when it reached the top floor, and Ava stepped out into a sleek, modern hallway. The walls were adorned with stunning fashion photographs, showcasing some of Olivia Harris's most iconic collections. Ava's breath caught as she looked at them, mesmerized by the artistry. This was where it all happened. This was the world she had always dreamed of. At the end of the hallway, she saw the doors to the main office, where a team of assistants and designers were already hard at work. She took one last deep breath before pushing the door open. Inside, the room was buzzing with energy. A group of young designers huddled around a table covered in sketches, fabric swatches, and fashion magazines. Seamstresses worked on sewing machines in the corner, the rhythmic hum of their work filling the space. The room was a whirlwind of creativity, chaos, and passion. Ava felt a spark of excitement run through her. This was where she belonged. Olivia Harris was standing by her desk, her back to Ava as she spoke to a colleague. She was tall, poised, and dressed in a chic, tailored outfit that spoke of elegance and authority. When she turned and saw Ava, her face lit up with a warm smile. "Ava. Welcome," Olivia said, walking over to greet her. "I'm so glad you could join us. How was your first day in the city?" "It's incredible," Ava replied, trying to steady her nerves. "I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for this opportunity." Olivia smiled. "The pleasure is mine. You've got a lot of work ahead of you, but I'm confident you'll be a great addition to the team. I'll introduce you to the other designers and give you a quick tour. Let's get started." Olivia introduced Ava to the rest of the team, designers, assistants, and other interns who had been working at Harris Couture for months or even years. Each person had their own unique sense of style and energy, and Ava felt a sense of camaraderie immediately. She was amazed at how welcoming and supportive everyone seemed, despite the fast-paced, high-pressure environment. As the day went on, Ava found herself caught up in the whirlwind of activity. She helped organize fabrics, ran errands for the team, and even had a chance to sit in on a design meeting where they discussed the details of an upcoming collection. There was so much to take in, so much to learn. The work was challenging, but Ava thrived in the chaos. She loved the hustle and the constant push to do better, be faster, and think more creatively. By the end of the day, Ava was exhausted but exhilarated. She had spent hours running around the office, assisting with everything from preparing samples to drafting quick sketches for the team. Every task, no matter how small, felt like a step toward her future. As she packed her things to leave, Olivia called her over. "You did great today, Ava," Olivia said, her eyes warm with approval. "I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do." Ava smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "Thank you. I'm really grateful for this opportunity." "Keep that enthusiasm," Olivia said with a smile. "We're going to need it." As Ava stepped out into the evening air, the city lights of Manhattan illuminated the streets, casting a golden glow over the skyline. The hustle and bustle of the city hadn't slowed down a bit, and Ava couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging. This was her world now. The world she had always dreamed of. The world where her dreams could finally come true. And as she walked home, her heart filled with determination, Ava knew that this was just the beginning. The challenges would come, the pressure would build, but she was ready. She had always been ready. The days following Ava's first day at Harris Couture had been a whirlwind. She had settled into the fast-paced rhythm of the office, learning the ropes and adjusting to the overwhelming number of tasks that came with being an intern at one of the most prestigious fashion houses in New York City. The work was grueling, and the expectations were high, but Ava was determined to prove herself. It wasn't long before the pressure started to mount. The first big project that Ava was tasked with was part of an upcoming Fashion Week show, one that Olivia had been planning for months. It was a collection that had to be perfect, a true representation of Harris Couture's brand, bold, innovative, and sophisticated. Ava was thrilled to be a part of it, but she couldn't help but feel the weight of the responsibility. "All right, everyone," Olivia called out to the team one afternoon, standing at the front of the studio. "The deadline for our Fashion Week collection is fast approaching. We need to push the boundaries, create something that will blow everyone away. This is our chance to make a statement." The room fell silent as Olivia's gaze swept over the designers, assistants, and interns. She was clearly focused, her intensity filling the space. "Ava," Olivia said suddenly, turning her attention to the young intern, "I need you to take the lead on organizing the sketches for the collection. You'll be working closely with the design team to compile all the ideas and make sure we're staying on track. Can you handle that?" Ava felt a surge of anxiety, but she nodded without hesitation. "Yes, I can do that." Olivia gave her a nod of approval. "Good. This is an important project. Don't let us down." Over the next few days, Ava's life became a blur of sketches, fabrics, and fittings. She worked closely with the other designers, taking notes and organizing their ideas into coherent, visually striking concepts. Every sketch had to be reviewed, every fabric swatch meticulously chosen. It was an exhausting process, and Ava found herself staying late into the night to make sure everything was perfect. But no matter how hard she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The designs were beautiful, the fabric stunning, but there was no spark, no clear connection between them. Ava felt that they were missing something crucial, something that would make them truly stand out. One evening, as she was poring over a stack of sketches, Ava came across a design that she had done earlier in the week. It was one of her own concepts, one that she had almost discarded because it felt too risky. The design was unconventional, a blend of sharp, geometric lines and soft, flowing fabric. It was a dramatic contrast to the rest of the collection, but Ava couldn't shake the feeling that it was the missing piece. Her heart raced as she stared at the sketch. This design could be the breakthrough the collection needed, the one that would set it apart. But if she presented it, would Olivia and the team be on board? What if they rejected it, deeming it too daring? Would it ruin her chances at being taken seriously? As Ava wrestled with the decision, she felt the weight of the deadline pressing down on her. The fashion show was only a few days away, and there was no time to waste. She had to act quickly if she wanted to make a real impact. Taking a deep breath, Ava decided to take the risk. She gathered her courage and walked over to Olivia's office. The door was slightly ajar, and Ava hesitated for a moment before knocking softly. "Come in," Olivia called from inside. Ava stepped into the office, her hands trembling slightly as she held out the sketch. "Olivia, I've been thinking about the collection, and I believe this design could really elevate it. It's a bit different, but I think it could make a big statement." Olivia looked up from her desk, her expression unreadable. Ava's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the older designer study the sketch. "I know it's a bit unconventional," Ava continued, "but it feels like it could be the missing element. It has energy, it has edge, it could really make our collection stand out at Fashion Week." There was a long pause, and Ava's nerves threatened to overtake her. What if she doesn't like it? What if I've overstepped? Finally, Olivia set the sketch down on the desk and leaned back in her chair. "It's definitely bold," she said, her tone thoughtful. "But that's what we need right now, something that will catch people's attention." "I like it, Ava. We'll work with it." Ava let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Really?" Olivia nodded. "It's risky, but that's what makes it exciting. Let's see what you can do with it." The next few days were a blur of activity as Ava worked with the team to bring the new design to life. The fabric had to be sourced, the measurements adjusted, and the final piece constructed. As the days flew by, the pressure only intensified. Ava spent long hours in the studio, making sure every detail was perfect. She felt the weight of the expectations on her shoulders, but she refused to let it break her. When the day of the fashion show finally arrived, Ava felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety bubbling in her chest. She stood backstage, watching the models get ready, their makeup being applied, their hair styled into perfection. The collection was nearly complete, and all that was left was the final push. The lights of the runway gleamed brightly, casting a dramatic glow over the stage. Ava stood with the team, her heart racing as she watched the models take their places. One by one, they walked down the runway, wearing the designs that Ava had helped to create, including the bold, unconventional piece she had suggested. When it was time for the final look to be revealed, Ava held her breath. The model strutted confidently down the runway, wearing her design. The geometric lines and flowing fabric caught the light, shimmering as the model moved. The audience gasped in awe, and Ava couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The collection was a hit. Olivia's face lit up with satisfaction as the final model walked off stage. The applause echoed through the room, and Ava couldn't believe it, they had done it. That night, as Ava sat in the back of a cab on her way home, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had survived the pressure. Not only had she met the expectations, but she had exceeded them. She had taken a risk, and it had paid off. As she looked out at the dazzling lights of the city, she realized that this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges, more pressure, but Ava knew now that she was capable of handling it all. She had found her place at Harris Couture, and no matter what came next, she was ready to face it head-on. The days following the fashion show were a whirlwind of excitement and press. Harris Couture had dominated the headlines, with glowing reviews of the collection that had been presented at Fashion Week. Critics and fashionistas alike were praising the daring, avant-garde elements that had been woven into the designs, and Ava's bold creation had been at the center of it all. It was, without a doubt, her moment. At first, it felt surreal. Ava had always dreamed of being in the spotlight, of having her work recognized by some of the most respected names in the fashion world. Now, as she sat in the break room at Harris Couture, scrolling through her phone, she couldn't help but smile. Her design had been featured on major fashion blogs, and the buzz surrounding her idea was electric. "Hey, Ava." Olivia's voice broke through her thoughts. Ava looked up to see her boss standing in the doorway, a pleased look on her face. "Yes?" Ava asked, putting her phone down and straightening up in her seat. Olivia walked into the room, holding a tablet in her hands. "I wanted to show you something," she said, handing the device to Ava. "This is your design. It's being featured on the cover of Vogue as one of the standout pieces from the show." Ava's heart skipped a beat. She stared at the screen in disbelief. The model from the fashion show was wearing her design, the bold geometric lines and flowing fabric were unmistakable. The headline read, "Harris Couture shakes up Fashion Week with bold new vision." I can't believe it," Ava whispered, feeling the weight of the moment. This is incredible." Olivia smiled, her tone warm but professional. "You did great, Ava. This piece is what set the collection apart, and now the world knows it. I'm proud of you." For the first time since starting at Harris Couture, Ava felt like she had truly earned her place. She had taken a risk, she had been bold, and now it was paying off in ways she never imagined. But as quickly as the praise came, the pressure increased. The excitement of the fashion show faded, replaced by the reality of the fashion industry, a constant push for perfection, the never-ending demand for creativity, and the competition among designers. Ava knew she had just achieved a huge milestone, but she also understood that in this world, one success didn't guarantee another. The expectations would only rise. In the days that followed, Ava began to notice subtle changes in the office. While Olivia and the senior designers were supportive of her, some of the other interns and assistants seemed distant. The compliments had stopped coming as frequently, and she overheard murmurs when she walked into rooms. She had moved from being one of the many faces in the studio to someone who had earned attention, and with that attention came new challenges. Ava noticed that the other interns, who had once been friendly, now seemed to be a little colder. One afternoon, as she was gathering fabric swatches for a fitting, she overheard a conversation between two of them. "I don't know why they're giving her so much credit," one intern said, her voice laced with jealousy. "It was just one design. There are other pieces in the collection that are just as good. Why is everyone making such a big deal out of it?" The other intern, who had always been polite to Ava, replied, "I heard Olivia's been giving her more responsibilities lately. Maybe she's playing favorites." Ava's heart sank at the words. She tried to shake off the sting, telling herself that it didn't matter. But it did. She wasn't blind to the way people were looking at her now. She was no longer just the quiet intern in the corner, she had become a symbol of what some people considered an overnight success. But she knew that it wasn't overnight at all. It had been years of hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. And yet, now that she had received recognition, there was a new kind of pressure that came with it. The following week, Ava found herself feeling increasingly isolated. She spent her days working on the next project, a special line for an upcoming gala that Olivia had been asked to design. The pressure to deliver was heavier than ever. Olivia had entrusted Ava with the task of helping choose the final designs for the gala, and Ava knew she couldn't afford to let her down. One afternoon, as she was reviewing the sketches for the gala with the design team, a loud voice interrupted her thoughts. "You're still using that design," one of the other assistants, Clara, sneered as she walked by. "That's so last season. You should really think about doing something new." Ava froze. Clara had never been openly rude to her before, but there was a clear edge in her tone. Clara was one of the senior assistants, someone who had been at Harris Couture for years, and Ava knew that she had made some enemies along the way. It wasn't uncommon in the fashion world for rivalries to form, but hearing Clara's sharp comment stung nonetheless. Before Ava could respond, Olivia walked into the room. Clara quickly flashed a tight smile and left, but Ava could feel the tension in the air. Olivia's gaze lingered on Ava for a moment before she addressed the room. "Ava, I trust you're still on track for the gala project?" Olivia's voice was calm, but there was an unspoken challenge in her tone. "We need to make sure everything is perfect. This is a major event for us." Ava nodded, fighting the unease in her stomach. "Yes, I'm working on it. I have some ideas I'd like to present tomorrow." "Good," Olivia said, her gaze still steady. "Remember, we have a reputation to uphold. Don't let the pressure get to you." Later that evening, as Ava sat in her tiny apartment in Brooklyn, reviewing the gala designs, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She had gone from being an anonymous intern to being thrust into the limelight, and with it came expectations, not only from Olivia and the team, but from herself. She wanted to prove that she wasn't a one-hit wonder, that she could keep up with the demands of the fashion world and continue to create meaningful work. She stared at the sketches, feeling frustrated. The ideas that had once flowed so easily now seemed stale, uninspired. She pushed herself harder, trying to come up with something fresh, but every time she thought she was onto something, doubts crept in. What if I can't do it? What if I've already peaked? Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a text from her mom. "How's everything going, Ava? I'm so proud of you. I saw the article about your design. It's amazing. Keep pushing, and don't forget to take care of yourself. Love you." Ava smiled at the message, feeling a wave of comfort wash over her. She had come so far, but the road ahead would be just as challenging. She couldn't let the doubts consume her. She had to keep going. The next day, when she presented her new designs to Olivia, Ava was met with a mixture of praise and constructive criticism. Olivia was impressed with the direction Ava had taken, but she pushed her to dig deeper, to think beyond what she had already created. Ava nodded, knowing that Olivia was right. It was time to take the next step. That evening, after another grueling day, Ava stood in front of her mirror. The woman looking back at her was different now. She wasn't just a hopeful intern, she was someone who had proven her worth and earned her place at Harris Couture. The road ahead might be full of challenges, but Ava knew one thing for certain: she wasn't going to back down. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it from her. The days at Harris Couture had become a blur of fittings, sketches, and deadlines. Ava had been working tirelessly on the gala collection, trying to perfect her designs and make her mark on the fashion house. The pressure was immense, and with each passing day, she felt herself inching closer to a breaking point. But she also knew that this was the moment that could define her career. She couldn't afford to mess it up. That afternoon, Olivia called a meeting in the main design room. Ava had been running back and forth between the fabric rooms, coordinating with the team, making sure everything was in place. When she arrived at the meeting, she was surprised to see that Clara and a few of the other senior designers were present, along with a new face, someone Ava had never seen before. "This," Olivia began, gesturing toward the newcomer, "is William Michaels, one of the top stylists in the industry. He's going to be helping us finalize the look for the gala." Ava's stomach sank. William Michaels was well known for his cutthroat style and reputation for pushing designers to their absolute limits. His approval was something every designer at Harris Couture craved, but it came with an unspoken cost. The pressure of working with someone like him was not something Ava had prepared for. "William, this is Ava," Olivia continued, her voice smooth but sharp. "She's been taking the lead on the gala collection." William extended a hand to Ava with a nod, his eyes scanning her face in a way that felt almost too calculating. "Nice to meet you," he said coolly, not offering much more than a polite smile. "I've seen your work, Ava. Impressive, but it's all about how it performs in the final cut." Ava forced a smile, swallowing the sudden surge of anxiety. "Thank you. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on the collection." The room fell into a tense silence as William made his way to the front of the room, where the mood boards and fabric samples were laid out. Ava watched as he ran his hands over the sketches, his sharp gaze evaluating every detail. "I think we're close," William said, his voice low but commanding. "But I need to see more risk, more edge. We're here to create something that makes a statement, something that no one else has done before. Don't play it safe. I want to see something new, something that pushes boundaries." Ava's mind raced. What did he mean by something new? Her designs had already been bold, unconventional. But she knew that in the fashion world, there was always someone waiting to critique or push the boundaries even further. The fear of failure loomed large in her mind. "I'll make sure we push it further," Ava said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Olivia looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "Good. We're counting on you to deliver, Ava. Don't disappoint us." The next few days were a blur of sleepless nights, caffeine-fueled mornings, and endless revisions. Ava worked around the clock, trying to please William's exacting standards. The pressure to create something that would wow the stylist and the rest of the team felt like it was slowly suffocating her. She had already submitted a design for the gala that had been well received by Olivia, but now she was tasked with going even further. The creative freedom she once had now felt like a curse. Every new iteration of her sketches felt less like a personal expression of her talent and more like a desperate attempt to please someone who was almost impossible to satisfy. One evening, after a long day in the studio, Ava sat at her desk, staring at her latest design. It was bold, it was edgy, but something didn't feel right. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had lost a part of herself in the process. She had let herself be consumed by the desire to meet someone else's expectations, and in doing so, had lost touch with what made her design unique in the first place. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from her mom. "Hey, sweetie. How's everything going? I saw the latest article about the gala, your designs are amazing. Just don't forget to breathe and enjoy the journey. We're all so proud of you. Love you." Ava smiled at the message, feeling the weight of her mom's words. The validation from her family was comforting, but it also made her realize something important: she wasn't creating for herself anymore. She was too focused on impressing others, especially William. The fear of rejection had clouded her vision. The next day, when the team reconvened for another round of revisions, Ava walked into the room with a renewed sense of clarity. The designs she had been creating were good, but they weren't hers. They didn't have the spark that had made her bold design at Fashion Week stand out. She needed to take a step back, recenter herself, and bring the originality back into her work. As she laid out her newest design for the team, she felt her heart race. This piece was different. It was personal. It was daring in a way that reflected her true self as a designer, not just as someone trying to fulfill someone else's vision. William looked at it with a critical eye, as expected. He was silent for a long moment, studying the piece with a frown. Ava held her breath, waiting for his verdict. Finally, he spoke. "This is better," he said, his tone not exactly warm but less critical than usual. "It's bold, it's risky. But is it enough?" Ava felt a sudden rush of frustration. Was enough ever going to be good enough for him? She had taken a huge risk, and it felt like no matter what she did, it would never be enough to meet his unyielding standards. "I think it's exactly what we need," Olivia chimed in, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "It's the perfect blend of risk and sophistication. I'm behind it." Ava exhaled, relief washing over her. Olivia's endorsement meant everything. She had worked hard to prove herself to her boss, and this was the validation she had been craving. William didn't offer further comment, but Ava didn't need it. She knew that he might not fully understand her vision, but Olivia did. And that was all that mattered. As the gala day neared, Ava found herself struggling with the pressure once again. The stakes had never been higher. But she couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of confidence in her work. She had made the decision to trust herself, to take creative risks and trust that her vision would come through, no matter what anyone else thought. The night of the gala arrived, and Ava watched from the sidelines as her design strutted down the runway. The model wearing the final piece, the one that had nearly been rejected, looked stunning. Ava's heart swelled with pride as she saw the crowd's reaction. The piece was daring, different, and it worked. As the final model took her turn, the audience erupted into applause. The designs had been a hit. Ava had done it. Later that evening, as the team gathered to celebrate the success of the gala, Olivia pulled Ava aside. "You did well tonight," Olivia said, her tone warm but still professional. "You've proven that you can handle the pressure and the criticism. You've got a future here at Harris Couture." Ava smiled, her heart full of gratitude. "Thank you, Olivia. I couldn't have done it without your support." Olivia nodded, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Just remember, Ava, in this industry, it's about more than just your designs. It's about knowing who you are and standing by it. If you let the pressure of others' expectations cloud your vision, you'll lose yourself in the process." Ava took her words to heart. She had learned a valuable lesson over the past few months. In a world filled with endless demands, the most important thing was staying true to herself. She wasn't just a designer anymore. She was Ava, a woman with a vision, and no one could take that away from her. In the aftermath of the gala, Ava's reputation at Harris Couture had taken a massive leap forward. She had proven that she could handle the pressure and deliver designs that spoke to both innovation and elegance. The night was a triumph for both her and the company, but with success came an inevitable shift in dynamics. The spotlight was no longer solely on the established designers. Ava had made her mark, and others noticed. It wasn't long before she started feeling the weight of the attention, and it wasn't always the kind of attention she'd hoped for. One Monday morning, as she walked into the studio, she noticed a subtle but palpable change. The murmurs in the room stopped when she entered, and for the first time, she realized she was being watched. The other interns, who had once treated her like one of them, now kept their distance. There was a quiet tension in the air. It wasn't that they were outright hostile, but the subtle shift in their behavior made Ava feel like an outsider. "Good morning, Ava," Clara, one of the senior assistants, said in passing, her voice saccharine sweet but her smile forced. It wasn't the usual warmth she had shown her before. Clara had always been polite, but there was something about the way she said Ava's name now that felt insincere. Ava forced a smile, offering a simple nod in return. She had expected some level of change, but the coldness was still unsettling. The office politics at Harris Couture were far more complicated than she had ever anticipated. As Ava sat at her desk, flipping through the latest sketches for the next collection, Olivia approached her. She was carrying a stack of fabric swatches, a serious expression on her face. "Ava," she began, her tone more businesslike than usual, "I want you to start working on something special for an upcoming private event. It's a high-profile client, and they've requested a custom gown for a gala. It's a huge opportunity for us, and I want you to take the lead." Ava's eyes widened in surprise. The thought of designing a custom piece for such a prominent client was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. This was a chance to prove that she could not only handle the creative side of things but also cater to the high demands of the fashion elite. "I won't let you down, Olivia," Ava said, her voice firm. I'll get started right away. Olivia gave her a small nod, but her gaze lingered for a moment longer than usual. It was almost as though she was sizing Ava up, measuring her for something more than just the task at hand. Before Ava could ask anything more, Olivia turned and walked away, leaving her alone with her thoughts. As the week wore on, Ava dived headfirst into the project. She knew that the client's expectations would be through the roof, but this was her chance to prove she could handle the pressure. Her design sketches were bold and unique, but Ava knew she had to find the right balance between creativity and practicality. This gown had to be a statement piece, one that would not only make the client happy but also elevate her status at Harris Couture. But there was something else weighing on her mind, Clara. It had become clear to Ava that Clara, once a friendly and supportive figure, had begun to distance herself. Ava had noticed subtle changes, the way Clara spoke to her now, the way she seemed to undermine her ideas in meetings. At first, it was just small comments, like suggesting that Ava's designs were too risky or not on brand for the event. But it was becoming more frequent, and Ava couldn't help but feel that Clara was trying to undermine her position at Harris Couture. One afternoon, as Ava was reviewing fabric choices with the design team, Clara made a pointed remark that sent a chill down her spine. "Isn't that a little too unconventional for the client's taste?" Clara said, eyeing Ava's selection of bold colors and unique textures with a critical eye. "I mean, we don't want to push it too far, right? This isn't a runway show. It's a private event." Ava felt her cheeks flush with frustration, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I think the client will appreciate something that stands out. It needs to be memorable." Clara smirked slightly, her tone dismissive. "I'm sure, but just remember, Ava, the last thing we want is a design that overshadows the client rather than complements them." It was an unspoken challenge, a test of her resolve. Clara was sending a message, and Ava understood it all too well. Clara didn't want Ava to succeed. She didn't want her to take the spotlight from the established designers at Harris Couture, especially not someone who had only just arrived. That evening, as Ava sat at her desk working late into the night, she received a message from an unexpected source, Olivia. It was a simple text. "Meet me in my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. I need to discuss something important with you." Ava's heart raced. Was this about the gown? Or was Olivia going to give her a reality check, like Clara had? The uncertainty gnawed at her as she closed her laptop and packed her things for the night. The next morning, Ava arrived early, trying to shake off the anxiety that had been building all night. When she entered Olivia's office, she was met with a surprisingly warm smile. "Come in, Ava. Have a seat," Olivia said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Ava sat down, trying to maintain her composure. "What's on your mind, Olivia?" Olivia leaned back in her chair, her gaze steady. "I've been watching your progress, and I'm impressed with the direction you're taking with the custom gown. It's bold, but I think you're really starting to find your voice as a designer." Ava exhaled in relief. "Thank you. I've been trying to push myself outside my comfort zone." Olivia nodded, but there was something more she wanted to say. "However, I've been hearing some concerns from other members of the team, especially Clara. She's worried that your designs are too risky for this client, and that they might not align with the brand image we've worked hard to cultivate." Ava's stomach dropped. She had expected some criticism, but hearing it from Olivia herself stung. "I understand. But I think this gown is exactly what the client needs. It will make a statement, and that's what sets Harris Couture apart." Olivia's expression softened. "I agree with you, but you need to be aware of the politics in this industry. Clara and some of the others have been around much longer than you, and their opinions hold weight. I don't want you to lose your focus, but you need to play the game as well." Ava nodded, understanding the subtle message. "I get it. I'll work hard to find the balance between pushing boundaries and respecting the brand." Olivia smiled again, though there was a glimmer of something else in her eyes. "Good. And Ava, don't let anyone undermine you. You've earned your place here, but you need to be careful. There are some people who won't want you to succeed, no matter how talented you are. Ava felt a surge of confidence at Olivia's words. She had earned her spot at Harris Couture, and she wasn't going to let anyone take that away from her. She could feel the pressure mounting, but she also knew that she was ready for it. Later that day, as Ava worked through her sketches for the gown, Clara's words echoed in her mind. She had to remain true to her vision, even if it meant standing alone. Ava wasn't just designing for a client, she was designing for herself. The battle was far from over, but this time, Ava was prepared. She wasn't going to let the old rivalries or the whispers in the hallway shake her confidence. The days leading up to the unveiling of the custom gown were intense. Ava's schedule was packed with fittings, revisions, and constant adjustments to perfect the piece. But the closer she got to the final reveal, the more she felt Clara's presence looming over her. Clara had been watching every step Ava took, and her disapproving comments had become more frequent and pointed. It wasn't just a professional rivalry anymore, it was personal. Ava had always believed in healthy competition, but Clara's undermining tactics had crossed a line. The tension between them had reached a boiling point, and Ava knew that something needed to give. She could feel it in the air, a storm was coming. One late afternoon, after yet another long day of revisions, Ava returned to her desk to find a note slipped under the edge of her sketchbook. The handwriting was unmistakable. "Meet me in the conference room. We need to talk." It was Clara. Ava's heart raced. What did Clara want now? She had already expressed her displeasure with Ava's designs, but this felt different. This felt like a final confrontation, a test of Ava's resolve. Taking a deep breath, Ava stood up and walked toward the conference room. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear Clara's voice inside, low and controlled, as though she were preparing for something important. Ava pushed the door open, her eyes meeting Clara's cold stare. Clara was standing by the window, her arms crossed, as if she were waiting for Ava to arrive. The moment Ava stepped into the room, Clara turned, her face a mixture of determination and disdain. "You've been walking around like you own the place, Ava," Clara said, her voice calm but cutting. "You think just because you pulled off one successful design, you've earned the right to challenge everything we've worked for?" Ava's pulse quickened, but she refused to let Clara intimidate her. "I'm not trying to challenge anything, Clara. I'm just doing my job, the same as you." Clara's lips curled into a tight smile. "Don't play coy. You think you can come in here, throw around some flashy designs, and change everything without considering the bigger picture? You're not ready for this, Ava. You never will be." Ava took a step forward, her voice steady despite the rising tension. "I'm ready. I'm more than ready. I've put in the work, and I've earned my place here. You may not like it, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm here to stay." Clara scoffed, stepping closer to Ava. "You think you're special? That your bold ideas will make you stand out? You're just a pawn in a game. You'll never have the kind of influence I do here." Ava met Clara's gaze without flinching. "I don't need to be like you, Clara. I'm not interested in playing your game. I'm going to make my own way." There was a long pause as Clara studied her, her eyes narrowing. "You think you can just walk over me? Over all the people who've been here longer than you? You'll never make it on your own. You'll need people like me to survive in this world, Ava." Ava felt a surge of anger rise in her chest, but she held it in check. She had worked too hard to let Clara's venomous words get under her skin. "I don't need anyone's permission to succeed," Ava said firmly. "And I'm not here to make friends with everyone. I'm here to create something that matters. If you can't see that, then that's on you." Clara's expression shifted, a mix of frustration and something else, maybe jealousy, flickering in her eyes. "You think you're better than me? You think you can just walk into this industry and outshine everyone who's worked their entire lives to get here?" Ava shook her head. "No, Clara. I don't think I'm better than you. I just think I'm different. And I think that's exactly what this industry needs. The world doesn't need more of the same. It needs new voices. It needs people who are willing to push boundaries, even if it means standing alone. Clara was silent for a moment, her eyes searching Ava's face as if trying to find some hint of weakness. But Ava stood her ground, unwavering. Finally, Clara spoke again, her voice lower now, almost a whisper. You're making a big mistake, Ava. You'll see. This world isn't kind to people like you, the ones who think they can change everything without understanding what it really takes. I've seen it before. People like you burn out fast. Ava felt a chill run through her. Clara's words struck a chord, but instead of scaring her, they only fueled her determination. She had heard similar things before, from critics, from naysayers, but she wasn't going to let it stop her. She had made it this far, and she wasn't going to back down now. I'll take my chances, Ava said, her voice steady. I'm not here to play it safe. I'm here to make my mark, and I'll do it whether you like it or not. Clara glared at her for a moment longer, then turned away, her posture stiff with frustration. Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. Ava stood in silence for a few seconds, letting Clara's words hang in the air. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out of the room, her mind racing. She had expected this confrontation, but now that it was over, she felt a sense of clarity settle over her. Clara's threats no longer held any power over her. She wasn't afraid. In fact, she was more sure than ever that she was on the right path. The next day, Ava returned to her desk, but something was different. The tension between her and Clara was palpable, but Ava wasn't going to let it affect her. She had a job to do, and that's exactly what she was going to focus on. The custom gown was almost finished, and she was determined to make sure it was everything the client had dreamed of, and more. As she sat down to review the final sketches, Olivia came into the room. She was holding something in her hand, a file. Ava, she said, her voice calm, I've been meaning to talk to you. Clara's been coming to me with some concerns about your designs. Ava's stomach dropped. She had expected Clara to go behind her back, but hearing it from Olivia made it real. Still, she refused to let fear take hold. What kind of concerns? Olivia sat down across from her, her expression unreadable. She thinks you're taking too many risks with this client. She believes your designs aren't in line with the brand. She's not the only one questioning your direction. Ava felt a surge of frustration, but she kept her tone neutral. I understand. But I believe in what I'm doing. This gown isn't just for the client, it's a reflection of who I am as a designer. I'm not going to compromise that. Olivia studied her for a moment before nodding slowly. I admire your conviction, Ava. But you need to understand that the industry is ruthless. It's not just about talent, it's about knowing when to push and when to pull back. Ava clenched her fists under the table, feeling the weight of Olivia's words. I get it. But I'm not going to water down my vision to fit into someone else's mold. Olivia's eyes softened. I know, Ava. And that's why I'm giving you this chance. You've proven yourself. But just remember, there's a fine line between boldness and arrogance. Walk carefully. Ava nodded, taking a deep breath. I will. Thank you for believing in me. As Olivia left the room, Ava felt a wave of determination wash over her. Clara might have tried to tear her down, but it was clear that she was going to rise above it. This was her time, and nothing, not even Clara, could take that away. The day of the private event was fast approaching, and with it, the culmination of all of Ava's hard work and determination. The custom gown she had been working on for weeks was finally taking shape, each stitch sewn with care, every detail meticulously crafted. It was a masterpiece, bold, daring, and undeniably Ava. This gown was going to make waves in the fashion world, and Ava knew that. But as the hours ticked down to the big reveal, a knot of tension twisted in her stomach. She could feel the weight of expectation, not just from the client, but from the entire team at Harris Couture. Clara had been strangely quiet lately, but Ava knew the animosity wasn't gone. There were whispers that Clara might try to sabotage her efforts, whether intentionally or not. But Ava had come too far to let anyone take this from her. She wasn't going to let her guard down now. The gown was laid out on a mannequin, its shimmering fabric catching the light in the design studio. Ava stepped back to admire it one last time. The intricate embroidery on the bodice was a perfect mix of elegance and edge, the flowing skirt gave the gown a sense of movement and grace, and the bold color, a rich deep emerald, would certainly turn heads. Every detail spoke of her vision, her creativity, and her refusal to be confined by tradition. But still, doubts crept in. Was it enough? Was it too much? Ava snapped herself out of the reverie. She had no time for doubts. The fitting was scheduled in 2 hours, and everything had to be perfect. She had already arranged the meeting with the client, a high-profile socialite named Victoria Davis, who was known for her impeccable taste and high standards. This gown had to be the talk of the night, the one everyone would remember. "Are you ready, Ava?" Olivia's voice cut through the air, and Ava turned to find her boss standing in the doorway, holding a tablet and scanning through her notes. Ava nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm ready. I just want everything to go smoothly." Olivia walked into the room and eyed the gown. "It's stunning. This will definitely make a statement. I can see your vision clearly now." Ava felt a sense of pride swell within her, but it was quickly replaced by the usual anxiety. "I hope so. There's a lot riding on this." Olivia gave her a reassuring smile. "You've got this. Just remember, you've earned your place here, and no matter what happens, you've already proven yourself." The words were meant to comfort, but they only intensified Ava's awareness of what was at stake. She had fought tooth and nail to get here. This was her moment to truly shine, but it also felt like the tipping point. One small mistake could unravel everything. At the fitting, Victoria Davis arrived with her entourage of assistants, all of them buzzing with nervous energy. Victoria herself was a striking woman, tall and regal, her dark hair pulled back into a sleek bun. She surveyed the gown with a calculating eye as the assistant carefully helped her into it. Ava's heart skipped a beat. This was it. The moment that could define her career. Victoria stepped into the mirror, adjusting the gown's delicate train. She turned slowly, admiring herself, and Ava held her breath, waiting for the verdict. For a long moment, Victoria said nothing. The room was filled with an electric tension. Ava's fingers clenched at her sides as she fought to remain composed. Finally, Victoria's lips curled into a smile. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice low and approving. "But I think we can make a few adjustments, don't you?" Ava's stomach tightened. "Of course. What do you have in mind?" Victoria's gaze flicked up to the bodice, and she lifted a hand to touch the intricate beading. "It's lovely, but I think it could use something more. Maybe add a bit more sparkle, more drama. The gala will be filled with people, and I want to ensure I stand out." Ava swallowed hard, trying to keep the nerves at bay. "I can definitely adjust that. I'll make sure it has the extra impact you're looking for." Victoria smiled again, this time with a glint of approval in her eyes. "I knew I made the right choice coming to Harris Couture. You're exactly what I needed." Ava's confidence surged, but she knew the work wasn't over. She had just a few hours to make the changes Victoria had requested. But as she left the fitting room, her mind began to race with thoughts of what to do next. She knew that adding more sparkle would require careful execution, and she didn't have much time. The pressure was mounting, and with Clara lurking in the background, Ava knew she couldn't afford any mistakes. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Ava worked with the fabric team, carefully selecting beads and crystals to add the extra dimension that Victoria wanted. She oversaw every stitch, double-checking each detail, making sure that every embellishment was placed with precision. The work was exhausting, but Ava didn't let herself stop. She couldn't afford to. As the clock ticked closer to the event, Olivia came by again to check on the progress. She had a concerned expression on her face, but when she saw Ava working tirelessly, she gave a nod of approval. "You're doing great, Ava," Olivia said. "You've handled this so well. Don't let the pressure get to you." Ava smiled wearily. "Thanks. It's just, a lot. But I can handle it." At that moment, Clara walked in. Ava's heart skipped a beat, and she couldn't help but feel a flash of unease. Clara had been largely absent the past few days, and now here she was, eyeing Ava's work with a critical gaze. "How's it going, Ava?" Clara's voice was as smooth and cold as ever. Ava paused for a moment, meeting Clara's gaze with as much composure as she could muster. "It's going well. Just making some final adjustments." Clara nodded, but there was a hint of something darker in her eyes. "I'm sure you're trying your best. I just hope it's good enough for Victoria. You wouldn't want anything to go wrong on such an important occasion." Ava stiffened, sensing the subtle jab. "It will be fine. Don't worry about it." Clara smirked, then turned and walked out without another word. Ava felt the weight of her gaze linger long after she was gone. The words had been pointed, but Ava refused to let them get to her. She had already come this far. She wasn't going to let anyone, not even Clara, stand in her way. When the gown was finally complete, it was even more breathtaking than Ava had imagined. The sparkle of the added crystals caught the light in a way that made the gown almost glow, and the delicate lacework on the bodice was both sophisticated and daring. Ava knew she had done everything she could to make it perfect. As the event began, Ava watched from the back of the room as Victoria walked down the red carpet. The gown shimmered under the lights, drawing all eyes to her. Ava held her breath as she waited for the moment of truth. The crowd was captivated by the design, and Ava couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. She had done it. She had created something that people would talk about for years to come. Victoria stopped at the top of the stairs, giving a final twirl in the gown. The cameras flashed, capturing every angle, and the audience erupted into applause. Ava watched from the sidelines, her heart racing as she realized that her hard work had paid off. The gown had been everything she had hoped for and more. This was her moment, her victory. But as the applause echoed in her ears, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. She had overcome the challenges, silenced the doubts, and proven herself. And now, with the success of this gown, she was ready to face whatever came next. The night of the gala felt like a blur of flashing lights, clinking glasses, and the hum of excited conversations, but through it all, one thing stood out: Ava. The gown she had designed was the talk of the event, drawing admiration from everyone in the room. Victoria Davis was glowing in the emerald masterpiece, and as she made her rounds, people couldn't stop complimenting her on the design. Ava stood off to the side, her heart pounding in her chest, watching the scene unfold. The applause, the cheers, the photographers snapping pictures of Victoria, it was everything she had dreamed of, and yet, it felt surreal. This wasn't just a triumph, it was a turning point. For the first time in her career, Ava felt like she had truly arrived. "Hey, Ava," Olivia's voice cut through the noise, and Ava turned to find her boss walking toward her, a proud smile on her face. "You did it. That gown is the talk of the night. People are already asking who designed it." Ava smiled, her chest swelling with pride. "I'm just glad she loved it." Olivia's smile widened. "Not just her. Everyone loves it. You've made your mark, Ava. You've earned your place here." But Ava's eyes flickered back to the crowd, where Clara was standing off to the side, her arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with a look that was difficult to decipher. Ava couldn't help but feel a moment of unease. Clara hadn't congratulated her, nor had she said a word since the fitting. Her coldness lingered like a shadow, and Ava knew that this victory, however sweet, was far from over. Olivia followed Ava's gaze. "Don't mind Clara," she said softly. "She'll come around. She always does. You've proven yourself tonight. And you didn't just prove it to her, you proved it to everyone who ever doubted you." Ava nodded, but a part of her still wondered what Clara would do next. The older designer had been a constant presence in her career, sometimes a mentor, sometimes a rival. The tension between them had been palpable from the start, and Ava knew that with this success, Clara would either embrace her or escalate the rivalry. Still, for tonight, Ava wasn't going to let that ruin her moment. She had worked too hard to let anything take away from the joy she felt. The gown had been a success. She had succeeded, and the world was finally starting to see her for who she was, not just a young designer trying to make a name, but someone with a unique voice, a vision that the industry needed. As the night wore on, Ava found herself surrounded by people, all eager to talk to her, compliment her work, and discuss future collaborations. It was exhilarating, yet overwhelming. For so long, she had been behind the scenes, toiling away in obscurity, unsure if anyone would ever take notice. But now, the spotlight was on her, and she had to navigate this new world, one filled with opportunities, but also the weight of expectations. Ava excused herself from the crowd and stepped out onto the balcony for a moment of peace. The cool night air was a welcome relief, and she leaned against the railing, looking out over the city skyline. She took a deep breath, savoring the quiet moment before everything became real. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from her mother. "I'm so proud of you, Ava. I knew you could do it. Keep shining. We're all cheering for you." A smile tugged at Ava's lips as she read the message. Her mother had always been her biggest supporter, even when things were tough. And now, as Ava stood on the precipice of something huge, she realized that all those years of hard work, sacrifice, and dedication had led her to this moment. She had finally earned the respect she deserved. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. The next day, after the excitement of the gala had settled, Ava found herself in the office with Olivia. The atmosphere was buzzing with post-event energy, but Ava couldn't shake the feeling that there were still more challenges ahead. Olivia walked in with a stack of papers and a new glint of purpose in her eyes. "Ava, I have to say, I'm really impressed. You handled everything so well last night. You've got the eye of the industry now." Ava nodded, her mind still racing. "Thanks, Olivia. It's all been a bit overwhelming, but I'm glad it worked out." Olivia leaned forward, her expression serious. "I want to talk to you about the future. We've been discussing a possible position for you as the lead designer here at Harris Couture. You've proven yourself, and with your fresh ideas and unique approach, you're exactly what the brand needs." Ava's heart skipped a beat. Lead designer? It was everything she had ever dreamed of, but the pressure was immense. She wasn't sure if she was ready for such a huge responsibility. "That's incredible, Olivia. I don't know what to say." Olivia gave a knowing smile. "You don't have to say anything right now. Take some time. Think it over. But I want you to know that the opportunity is there, and I believe you have the potential to take this brand to the next level." Ava sat back in her chair, her mind spinning. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, but it also meant she would have to fully embrace her role as a leader. She would have to take on the weight of the brand, the vision, and the expectations that came with it. It was no longer about just proving herself, it was about shaping the future of the company. That evening, Ava sat in her apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened. The past few months had been a whirlwind, filled with triumphs and challenges, moments of doubt and moments of exhilaration. But now, as she looked ahead, she realized that she had come to a crossroads. The decision she made next would shape the trajectory of her career, and her life. Was she ready for the responsibility of leading Harris Couture? Could she balance the pressure of being a creative force with the demands of running a business? Could she maintain her integrity, her unique voice, and her vision while navigating the competitive, cutthroat world of fashion? Ava didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear, she wasn't going to back down. She had come too far to let fear hold her back. If she wanted to leave a legacy, to change the fashion world in the way she knew she could, she had to take this step. The phone buzzed again, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Clara. "I see what you did last night. Congratulations, Ava. You've earned this moment. Just remember, the higher you climb, the harder the fall. Don't get too comfortable." Ava stared at the message for a moment. Clara's words were as sharp as ever, but Ava wasn't afraid. The climb had only just begun, and Ava was ready for whatever came next. With a deep breath, she set the phone down and stood up. The future was wide open, and Ava was determined to shape it, on her terms. As Ava looked out the window of her apartment, the city stretched before her, full of endless possibilities. She had fought for her place, and now it was time to build something that would last. Something that would leave a mark on the industry. Something that would be her legacy. And with that thought, Ava smiled. The journey had only just begun. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?